Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1492 of the War News stream. And tonight we have wild news indeed. We are hearing that U.S. forces are preparing a final blow to decapitate the Iranian regime, as Iran has just ordered today 1 million troops to prepare for a potential U.S. invasion. And also, mines have been deployed near Iran missile sites, and also a very serious nuclear warning has been issued about Iran. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments not only within the Middle East, but also within Eastern Europe, East Asia, Western Europe, and the United States of America as well over the course of the past 24 hours. We have been able to hear that over the course of the day, the Islamic Republic of Iran has announced that they will be mobilizing 1 million armed citizenry to prepare for an eventual amphibious landing by the United States of America, which is expected to be coming here within the future, probably within this weekend and the next several weekends to follow. At the same time, we understand that the 82nd Airborne's Brigade Combat Team, one of the brigade combat teams of the 82nd Airborne Division, and also the USS Tripoli's 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit are currently getting incredibly close to arriving within the region, and may be prepared to conduct amphibious landings and near-shore operations within the very near future, most likely by the upcoming point of this weekend. Additionally, we have also been able to see that the United States Air Forces have been conducting significant strikes in a continuation of prior actions against Iranian forces throughout the larger part of the country, and Israel is also continuing their large strikes as well, with announcements coming out that the chief of the Iranian Navy was killed today in airstrikes by the United States in Bandar Abbas, and additionally we have also been able to hear that a couple of other higher-up officials of the Iranian government have been killed in strikes by the armed forces of the Republic and the State of Israel. Further than that, we have also heard that the Iranians have continued to return fire over the course of the day, and there has been continued missile impacts within the State of Israel, Kuwait, and other regions, and we have also been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis have announced that they are awaiting the final order by the Islamic Republic of Iran to close the Bab el-Mandeb, which is the strait that exists here on the southern Red Sea that allows for 12 to 14% of annual shipping traffic to pass through its waters and towards the Suez Canal or out of the Suez Canal, depending on the flow of traffic. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also today threatened through their state media the attacks on UAE power plants and other critical power infrastructure throughout the region. The President of the United States has been putting out a lot of mixed signals today. This morning, he stated that peace talks were going well, and peace in the Middle East was an assurity. By the afternoon, he was stating that the Iranians were not taking the talks seriously, and that it appeared that the war was going to be going on for a lot longer, and probably a lot more people are going to have to die in the Iranian government to make the war eventually end, which is quite literally covering every single base that could be imagined. Get this guy in the MLB, he's going to make a home run. We've also been able to hear some additional statements out of the Strait of Hormuz as well, as it does appear that passages of ships have now reached a record low even for the Chinese and Iranian vessels that have been able to pass through the strait, with the ongoing average right now only being one ship per day through the Strait of Hormuz, with the Strait of Hormuz in prior times handling well over 100 ships or more per day in pre-war conditions. We've also seen further developments outside the Middle East that inside of the area of the Russian Federation, the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted a second round of attacks on the Russian Federation's ports of Primorsk, Ust Luga, and also St. Petersburg city itself, with a large amount of drones being seen within the area of the St. Petersburg air defense perimeter, and the fires burning at the Primorsk oil loading port burning so heavily and brightly that they were visible in the city of Vyborg several dozen miles away. The port of Ust Luga has also been hit a second time and still appears to be the pits of hell, and it is quite ironic considering that Vladimir Putin was born very close to that area in real life. We now assume that he was most likely born in one of those hellfires and crawled out from it to lead Russia in the present day. The Russian Federation also appears to be in a bit of a pits of hell as far as finances are concerned, and we've now heard that Putin has now reached his hand out, palm facing towards the sun, demanding funds from the oligarchs that he created so that way he can try and continue to finance the war, once again showing the absolute desperate economic situation that the Russian Federation finds itself in right now, even in the midst of them attempting to support the Islamic Republic of Iran in their endeavors against the United States. The Ukrainian armed forces have also been able to inflict significant casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces over the course of the day, and have been able to stop most, if not all, frontline advances over the past 24 hours. We've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is now directly blaming Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia of opening up their airspace and allowing Ukrainian drones to fly through them to be able to make them to the ports of Ust Luga, Primorsk, and St. Petersburg to be able to conduct their strikes. The only issue with that logic, however, is that there's no way for Ukrainian drones to physically teleport over Belarus and Poland to just fly through the Baltic states, meaning the statement is largely fabricated to try and raise tensions with the Baltic states and the Russian Federation. Additionally, we've also seen some further developments out of the United Kingdom. They have now announced that His Majesty's Armed Forces will be allowed to seize the vessels of the Russian Federation that are acting in illicit sanctions violations in the transportation of Russian oils, meaning that the Royal Navy, the Royal Army, the Royal Air Force, and actually the British Army, correction, it's not the Royal Army, but the British Army and all other forces of the British government will be allowed and permitted to conduct largely free-reign operations to try and seize and stop Russian shadow tankers wherever they may be within Britain's reach. We also have a whole lot of other news to cover over the course of this day, but we do have to make sure, folks, to get into the news, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And I am absolutely sure that I'm not about to have to stop right now for I will have to stop for breaking news, because we actually have it coming out right now. And so I'll have to completely stop the coverage at the moment. We'll be getting to everything over the past 24 hours, because we actually have news that is breaking right now live on air. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so this will give him a break before he hyperventilates. But at the same time, though, we also have some very big news happening right now. This is happening near Tehran, Iran. We are getting photos showing what appears to be the headquarters of the IRGC Aerospace Forces, apparently burning after it was struck by what seems to be U.S. or Israeli airstrikes. The funny part is you can actually see, I believe, some minor air defense fire up there in the sky, if I'm not mistaken, from this photo right here. But are you seeing that too, Enforcer?
It appears that there's some sort of possible air defense fire maybe up there, or that might be something else. But it does appear that there are significant airstrikes going on in significant Iranian government headquarters at the moment.
Yeah, that's a very big strike right there. So the Aerospace Forces headquarters is apparently destroyed from the looks of it. That's a very big hit. It looks like the entire block has been taken out. So, it could be Israel or it could be the United States. Typically, in the past, we've seen Israel largely take out entire city blocks when it comes to trying to hit a target. So it would seem to line up with that. But it's kind of a toss-up right now about who this could be. So that's the big breaking news right now, is that headquarters getting taken out.
And we will be trying to see if we can get any updates or developments, folks, on any key officials that have been killed in this airstrike so far inside of Tehran, as we actually were able to hear the U.S. airstrikes in Bandar Abbas yesterday have proved very successful in results. We have been able to hear that the chief of the Iranian Navy, or largely the admiral of the entirety of the Iranian Navy, was killed overnight in those strikes, which we'll be getting to here in just a moment. But, of course, folks, getting back to our normal news coverage for the night, we are going to be making sure to cover all of the largest stories starting right now. So moving us on into the Middle East, we have been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still greatly concerned and is still preparing for the eventual arrival and what we all believe to be an inevitable amphibious landing or ground invasion into the Islamic Republic of Iran by U.S. forces to attempt to seize strategic locations and sites to either relieve the pressure on the Strait of Hormuz and to break the blockade that the Iranians have conducted on that area right now, or to be able to seize Karg Island. And while we are going down as far as oil resources are concerned, the Iranians will also be going down with us. It's either one or the other sort of a strategy or attempt that is going to be conducted here within the near future, and we've already been able to see that the Islamic Republic of Iran is trying to make every available action that they can to be able to try and defend against it, including the major announcement that we were able to hear today that they are apparently going to be mobilizing around 1 million troops at this moment to prepare for a U.S. ground invasion. That was according to Tasnim News today. A lot of people have been questioning where in the world did they even get 1 million troops from. The Iranian military is only 600,000 strong, and the IRGC is only about 150,000 strong, and the Besiege is an even smaller force than the IRGC for the larger part. So where in the world are they getting this figure of 1 million men? Well, I gotta tell y'all, folks, it's a pretty easy one to explain. There is this really interesting historical concept called the armed citizenry. And it is really something that is actually quite hilarious, because what armed citizenry are is a whole bunch of random guys. So, take, Reggie down there in Bandar Abbas, and the Iranian government says, oh, you are now a defender of the Islamic regime. Here's an AK, and you go right over there, and the Americans are that way. And that's generally how you would get about 1 million men to be able to do this. In reality, they're not going to be around. But the Iranians are stating that they are trying to mobilize these 1 million men, and we would believe that they probably will be able to mobilize them. But in terms of equipment and in terms of morale, battlefield prowess, tactics, and training, they're going to be short on everything but manpower. They don't have enough equipment to be able to arm 1 million extra men. They also don't have enough equipment to be able to really train these guys, even in the current Iranian military as it exists right now. So they're going to be heavily demoralized, poorly trained, and basically non-equipped.
And so, where do these guys even come from, by the way? Because I'd heard today that Iran had just lowered their age of like the military armed forces to 12-year-olds or something. They had lowered the age really, really low. I'm not sure if that's for armed forces frontline roles or if that's for support roles in the Iranian military, but they've lowered the age as of literally just this morning. And now they're announcing that 1 million guys are being called up to prepare for a potential U.S. invasion. So I'm not even really sure where they're getting these 1 million people from. That's a very large number of people just to randomly call up out of the blue.
Now, a lot of people are always a little bit apprehensive whenever people start to hear what sounds to be an outlandish number, because I also want to make this clear, folks, that about 1 million men is about the size of the entirety of the U.S. Armed Forces, at least the professional full-timers, not including the National Guards and the reservists. But to quickly show you all this, I have to remind you all of a little bit of a historical example to where this did happen before, but it largely proved to be of no effect. And this brings us to the end of the war in the Second World War in late 1944 and 1945. At that point, the Germans were largely defeated in the war, and it was really only a matter of time before they were going to be completely annihilated by the combined forces of the Allies and the Communists. And so the Germans decided that they needed to find manpower and from manpower reserves that they had not tapped into. Because of this, they went around and they created what was called the Volkssturm, which is a collection of the old, young, infirm, and largely unfit, and pressed them into military service to attempt a final last-ditch defense of the German Reich before they completely collapsed due to an unconditional surrender and also the Allies just curb-stomping them. These forces proved to be completely inadequate to do basically anything. They were poorly trained, they had literally no morale, they had no equipment. And so a lot of them would generally just drop their weapons and abandon their positions as soon as they saw any arrival of Allied or Soviet forces, and would leave the area and largely return home and try and pretend like the Germans never even put them into the Volkssturm. So Generally, that's what we would believe the situation would be right now with a lot of these Iranian conscripts that are going to be mobilized on short notice, is that they're going to be given basically no equipment, no training, and they're going to have absolutely no morale. They basically are a non-existent force. It is an attempt to try and create international concern, and it's also an attempt to be able to try and see that they might do something to be able to defend against a possible U.S. amphibious landing. But if they can't count on the regular army, their full-time army, there's nothing that will save them at that point if they're hoping that this armed citizenry will be able to help out the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's not going to be possible. Additionally, at the same time, I also have to tell y'all, and I have to keep this in mind for everyone here right now, that the United States is going to be sending, one, the 82nd Airborne Brigades, at least one of their brigade combat teams, which is a fairly significant trained force, and the 82nd Airborne Division in its modern structure is a quick reaction force which specializes in airborne and air assault operations. They're actually joint trained for both of them, but we would highly likely believe that that brigade combat team would be used in its more air assault form of doctrine instead of its airborne doctrine, as airborne doctrine is generally considered to be obsolete these days, and that's why the 82nd Airborne Division is the only one left that even jump trains. We also understand that the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, or the 11th MU, on board the USS Triploi will also be arriving here incredibly soon, which is once again an incredibly well-trained Marine Expeditionary Unit of mostly combat troops, including some support troops and other parts of their MEU, that will be able to deal quite a good bit of damage even to a well-trained force on the ground once they arrive, if we're not counting drone warfare in as a factor. So generally, these Iranian armed citizenry really wouldn't face a chance in a one-on-one fight without any indirect fire support, but we also understand that the U.S. Navy and Air Force would be providing significant amounts of indirect fire support to landing forces on the ground via the air. So that means that these forces will pose absolutely no threat or even really stand a chance of being able to defend the coastline if they're the only ones doing it. So moving on from that, a lot of people have been talking about the situation with the million troops that are being mobilized, the armed citizenry, as I like to call them. And a lot of people are wondering, are these guys going to pose a major problem, or are they not? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that right now?
Okay, so obviously a very big story. Iran claiming that they're going to find 1 million troops out of the woodworks all of a sudden to prepare for a possible U.S. invasion, and they're specifically referring to an invasion of Karg Island or one of the other islands around the Hormuz Strait. That's what the Iranians are really worried about. So, will these troops pose a major problem for a U.S. ground operation? 44% said no, the forces will largely be useless, while 28% said it'll cause challenges only, and that'll be pretty much it. 21% said yes, it will prevent a U.S. invasion of any sort. And I would say it'll probably pose challenges. Obviously, like we see this even in Russia. Even with poorly trained troops, these are still bodies that are in the way. So it's going to be a problem on that front. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. But here's the catch, though. Does anybody really truly believe that Iran's actually calling up 1 million people, 1 million trained soldiers? I would say that's very hard to believe. They might have some soldiers that are well trained, but if they're calling up 1 million people, that's largely going to be civilians. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Also, by the way, they don't have anywhere near the amount of weapons to arm that many people, like the enforcer was mentioning. They're going to be so poorly equipped, they'll be basically cannon fodder for the most part. So it'll be a challenge, but it's not going to prevent a U.S. invasion by any means. And also, this sounds a lot like propaganda, to be straight up. But enforcer, what say you?
I would be entirely honest with y'all, folks. I would be with the 44%. These forces are going to largely be useless. I would have to be honest with y'all. I actually don't doubt the claim that they are trying to mobilize 1 million troops as basically some sort of armed citizenry or a militia or a reservist group. It's not out of the question. They definitely have the population to support that sort of a figure. But the thing is that those kinds of forces only exist on paper. They are completely useless in every single form, rather than just bolstering the number on a spreadsheet to go, aha, look, we have 1 million more men now. They're going to be completely combat ineffective. One, they will never be equipped farther than small arms, meaning that they will never stand a chance against anything, literally anything at all. And I know that a lot of people have a concept that a couple of guys with rifles can do some damage, but in the real world, folks, the reality is that a couple of guys with rifles makes for a very nice target for an MQ-9 Reaper sitting above with a Hellfire to drop down right in the middle of that group. In reality, That is absolutely nothing. I mean, these guys would have to be supported with some sort of heavier crew-served weapons, some sort of indirect fire support and artillery, air defense, and a whole bunch of other things, which would basically turn them into the regular army to be able to actually try and stand a chance on a modern battlefield. Additionally, these guys have absolutely no training whatsoever. We can assume that out of these million people that they're raising right now, basically none of them have any sort of training. And if there are any amongst them that do have a minimal level of military training, they will most likely promote them to some sort of an impromptu NCO within those groups to try and keep the untrained and very scared other people who are there in line and keep them fighting. But the reality of it is that that's never worked. The Germans did that at the end of World War II as well. They used to have members, wounded members of the SS leading specific fire teams and squads of the Volkssturm, and that still did nothing. Usually they'd still pack up and run because they didn't want to face down the Allies, knowing that they were heavily undergunned and heavily untrained compared to the advancing Allied troops in Western Europe and in Eastern Europe. And then on top of that, the other thing is, folks, is that these people are going to have absolutely no morale. Everything that happens to them from that point on, if they're actually sent to try and fight a battle, they're not even going to know what the hell is happening, which is going to make them incredibly scared. That completely obliterates their morale, and they're going to start running as soon as they come under fire. A singular airstrike, to be entirely honest with you folks, is something that is incredibly scary to a lot of people that would be in the midst of one. If you watched a 500-pound bomb wipe out an entire platoon about 200 yards next to you, and you never heard the sound of a jet, you really didn't hear the sound of the bomb coming in, you just watched them get blown away in a pile of dust, you're going to get incredibly scared. And a lot of people are going to think, I don't even stand a chance because I don't know what just blew up the guys next to me, and I think I need to pack up and leave because I'm probably going to be next. So let me just drop this gun and go running for the hills. Generally, that's not going to be something, like, we're not going to see these guys giving any real resistance. They might have them on paper. I mean, technically, folks, Saddam's armies of Iraq, even in 2003, were massive. And yet, when we actually went and started invading Iraq in 2003, where were they? They weren't there because none of them were trained or equipped. They all just dropped their guns and went running away because nobody wanted to face down the total firepower combined arms of the U.S. Armed Forces. So I would be well within the camp. They're not going to stand a chance. I don't doubt that these people are actually being raised. I want to make that clear, but they're not going to stand a chance either way.
Also, by the way, since everybody's very curious about this, I did mention it earlier, the Iranians announced today, and this was just this morning they announced this, they lowered the minimum age for participation in war-related support roles to 12 years old. That's what was said today by apparently an Iranian military official. And they're letting these children basically participate in activities such as patrols, checkpoints, and logistics. So it does not sound like they're putting these kids basically, and they are obviously children basically, they're not putting them on the front lines, but the fact that they're letting children join the military and even in a support role is really wild. As young as 12 years old, that's really abhorrent to hear that, to say the least. And the Iranians are now announcing this like it's some like point of pride or something like that. They're basically calling on the children of Iran to join the military and literally operate checkpoints. And I mean, checkpoints require you to operate firearms as well. So they're putting basically children in charge of firearms at these checkpoints, which is terrible, by the way. So, you know, this violates a whole bunch of stuff, like obviously, but Iran doesn't care about that. It violates all kinds of international conventions. But of course, that doesn't hold Iran back. They're doing it anyway.
Also, by the way, I see a lot of people talking about the whole thing with child soldiers, which is really a bizarre sort of a thing that we even have to talk about that, but it's Iran, so it's not that bizarre. But let me tell you all a little bit about how the rules of war work surrounding that. It's completely illegal for Iran to even do something like this, according to international law and the Geneva Convention, is to use children in armed combatant roles. So we do understand that that, for one, is breaking the Geneva Convention. The issue, however, that a lot of people have is, does it break the Geneva Convention for U.S. forces in a hypothetical scenario to fire upon child soldiers? And that's
I don't think we can talk about that. I don't think we can talk about that on YouTube. We can't.
Well, you know, generally, folks, it starts to enter a lot of gray area, which is what I was about to get into there. But it's generally something that would not be that looked at too much under the rules of war, to generally put it that way. But anyways, moving on from that, we have also been able to hear some other additional developments around the area of the coastline. And the other major development that we've been able to hear today is that the IAEA director has been giving some pretty stern warnings today, some pretty stark ones, really, about the damage to Iran's Bushehr nuclear nuclear power plant and future significant damage that could be caused that could result in major radiological accidents affecting large areas in Iran and beyond. We've actually been able to largely hear at this point that there appears to have been 2 instances of an attempted attack on the Bushehr nuclear power plant. Both of them have hit directly onto the area of the nuclear campus, which includes the reactor and its supporting buildings, but we have not heard of any that have hit any critical structures at this point inside of the nuclear power plant itself. However, they are getting incredibly close. If it is the case that a bomb eventually hits either the turbine hall, the actual reactor itself, or any other critical equipment and systems of the reactor, this could lead to the reactor running away and then creating a nuclear meltdown. If that happens, we could see that a massive amount of radiation is released not only into the Islamic Republic of Iran, but directly into the Persian Gulf as well, which a large amount of countries within this area, including Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, all use as a source of water using desalination plants to then turn the water into fresh water that's drinkable by their population, meaning that most of their water source would be irradiated if the nuclear power plant is directly hit. The IAEA has been putting out significant warnings about this concerning the last 2 attacks because it is becoming increasingly a great concern that this could create a major radiological accident, one that would even be larger than a nuclear meltdown at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, at least in the number of people that would be affected and the kind of impact it would have on the world from that point on. So that is another significant issue that we're watching unfolding at the moment right now, and we are hoping that whoever keeps dropping the bombs on the Bushehr nuclear power plant stops doing that, because technically that is a war crime, unless if it can be proved that a nuclear power plant is being used solely for military purposes and military operations under the Geneva Convention. Can you even try to hit near it, much less directly onto it? Hitting directly onto it when it is largely a civilian power plant, which we can't really tell anything militaristic is going on at it at all, is not only wildly dangerous, it's wildly reckless and serves no real strategic purpose or aim to be able to try and conduct these continued attacks on the campus of a nuclear power plant. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news and that development there as well, we've also been able to get some more significant developments along the coastline of the country. We've been able to see another angle, folks, of the F-18 that came under attack yesterday, and we were actually able to see that the missile appears to have missed the aircraft just by a little. It looks like, from what we can tell, folks, if the manpad hit anything at all, it hit directly onto the left vertical stabilizer of the FA-18 Super Hornet, and even at that, it was a glancing blow. It may have also hit onto the actual exhaust nozzle of one of the turbojets inside of the Super Hornet, which also would largely be considered superficial damage compared to the kind of damage that could have been caused if it was a direct hit just a couple of feet forward on the aircraft, right into a turbojet, the vertical stabilizer, or into the central area of the fuselage of that FA-18 Super Hornet. This is a wildly close call, however, and I have to stress that this is something that is incredibly dangerous and quite concerning. This is lucky. The Iranians were very close to actually taking down this aircraft. Manpads can easily shoot down and destroy a modern aircraft. The Ukrainians have proven that time and time again in the war in Ukraine, as the Ukrainians have used autonomous drones equipped with air-to-air missiles and manpads to be able to shoot down Russian aircraft like Su-30s and other airframes and air types quite a numerous amount of times. And that means that the United States so far has been getting incredibly lucky with seeing that our aircraft that are conducting close-in operations are being able to escape by the skin of their teeth, but it's not going to be long before one of these aircraft takes a significant hit, and these pilots end up having to eject over Iranian waters or Iranian soil, and then end up being captured by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we also will see the direct loss of an airframe as well. The U.S. needs to make sure that our war planning puts in mind that we do not want these airmen of our nation being shot down and captured by the Iranians, especially considering the kind of rhetoric that they're making right now and the kind of rhetoric we're making towards them. They're going to be treated poorly and highly likely, almost guaranteed to be tortured if they have to eject over Iranian waters or soil and they're captured. So hopefully we'll be able to see that we don't see any sort of close-in operations like these, because at this point we're basically asking for one of our aircraft to get shot down and the pilots on that craft to be captured. Moving on from that bit of news, however, in that second angle of the FA-18 Super Hornet that was almost taken down yesterday, we have also been able to see that further on down and within the area of Bandar Abbas, there has been major news that's come out over the course of the day. According to news that has come out And I gotta say, I don't know about this one, folks, because we haven't really heard of Israel conducting any attacks in Bandar Abbas, but we can confirm that either the U.S. or Israel conducted a successful strike yesterday on Bandar Abbas, which from what we know yesterday, the U.S. was the one conducting the strike. That's what we're saying, the U.S. did it. They were actually able to kill the Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, who was the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. So this guy is basically the commander of the entirety of the Iranian Navy, and he was killed yesterday inside of the IRGC's headquarters in Bandar Abbas during the airstrikes that the United States was conducting yesterday. Tangsiri was responsible for operations related to the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, and he was also responsible for the other actions of the IRGC and its Navy throughout the entirety of the area, including the refusal to abandon ship for the IRIS Dina, which was destroyed by a U.S. nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Charlotte, off the coast of India and Sri Lanka, almost at the very beginning of the war. So we do understand that guy who not only led to the countless deaths of sailors that was needless, and also his blockade the strait, is now dead at this point, after either an Israeli or U.S. airstrike was able to hit the headquarters yesterday. A lot of people have also been talking about the situation at the Bushehr nuclear power plant a little bit further, as we did get some additional news that I didn't put down on the map today, but we were able to hear that apparently Russia has evacuated the nuclear scientists from the Bushehr nuclear power plant. We're also assuming the construction workers from Russia that specialize in nuclear reactor construction as well. We don't know when that happened, but the Russians did confirm that they had been evacuated at some point, and I also have to make it clear, folks, that we don't know when that was at all, because we were expecting some Russian aircraft, most likely IL-76s, from the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations to arrive in Iran at Bushehr and evacuate these guys. We never saw that, so we don't know when they were evacuated. That could have been at the very beginning of the war. It could have been just days ago. We're not sure. But still, a lot of people are talking about what is going to be happening around the area of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, which is the only operational and usable nuclear power generating reactor within the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So before I get into this poll right here, I do want to say that the White House has posted another strange video again, like about 20 minutes ago. The video, I can tell by just listening to it that if you replay the video in reverse, it probably says a message there. It sounds like a vocal in the background. So I'm trying to figure out what this video is saying in it. Also, by the way, I wish they would just put out a statement and make it clear. I don't know why they're doing this like riddle routine every time they put something out, but I'll try to see what the message says playing in reverse in just a second. But getting into the poll, though, Russia has evacuated its nuclear scientists from Iran's Bushehr nuclear facility as fears grow that the plant could be targeted. So what happens? 49% said it will likely be hit very soon, while 31% said forces will avoid the plant, and 12% said I'm 50-50 on this one. So, me personally, I still believe that forces will avoid the plant because, you know, even though we've seen very close range strikes, we've seen literally strikes on the location of the plant itself, literally to the left side of the reactor. I think that's warnings. I don't think that's actually something that Israel or the United States would carry out. If they were to do that, that would be horrific, to say the least. It's basically the equivalent of dropping a nuclear weapon. So I think they'll avoid it for the most part. I think they're just trying to scare the Iranians for the most part. Hopefully that's what it is. Some with the 31%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I'd have to be with the 31%. They should largely avoid the plant because, according to the Geneva Convention, it is a war crime to hit an operational nuclear power plant if there's no way to prove that it's only being used for military purposes, and I mean only. And that's the interesting thing about the Geneva Convention as far as it pertains to nuclear power plants, is that it has absolutely no provision in it going, if it's a dual purpose facility, it can be hit. It literally says it can only be hit if it is used solely for military purposes. So, for example, that little portable nuclear reactor that we're testing in the United States right now, if we got into war with China and we put that thing on Guam, say, the Chinese could actually blow that thing up and attack it directly, and that would actually be within the confines of the Geneva Convention, regardless of the fallout and the aftermath to follow from that kind of a strike. This sort of a power plant right here is not being solely used for military purposes, as it's connected to the larger grid, so at best, it's a dual-purpose power plant, possibly supporting supporting operations of missile production facilities and other arms production plants throughout the country, but it also is being used equally for a civilian purpose as well, meaning that according to the Geneva Convention, we can't hit that thing, otherwise it would be a war crime. On top of that, the damage would be immense from the radioactive fallout that would happen if we hit that, and it would largely completely moot or negate any benefit that we would get from blowing it up. I mean, there's like the negatives far outweigh the benefits, regardless of the Geneva Convention, of hitting an active nuclear power plant. But outside of that, we actually have more breaking news coming out of this moment right now. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so I did a quick analysis on the video the White House put out. So the cryptic message in the video, which they basically reversed it and encoded it into the video, it's saying there will be an exciting announcement tomorrow. That's what it's saying in this strange video they put out just now. So we'll see what that is. Once again, kind of childish stuff being put out here by the White House by any objective standard. This is pretty childish. Yeah, I wish they would just say it the way it was, because the fact I have to do a audio analysis on a White House video to find the message is a little bit crazy. In 2026, but that's what it says. So we'll expect something out of the White House tomorrow, and it could be anything.
Man, I just love it when the government that claims is the most transparent in history is the least transparent, and you have to go through a whole bunch of hurdles and hoops to even understand what the hell they're saying or what they mean by anything anymore. It's great, really. I mean, an elected government basically making it as difficult as shit for anyone to figure out what the hell they're even talking about anymore. Great work on the White House's part. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get on out of the area of Bushehr and on into some other news, as we've been able to hear a little bit further on down the Strait of Hormuz, that it appears that there is not really a good situation developing in this area. We've heard that apparently the transits of the Strait of Hormuz is down to one a day. There has been only one vessel has been able to pass through, apparently per the day, according to the UK MTO, and it does appear that right now the Strait of Hormuz is effectively completely shut down, as we are seeing that there are basically no transits. The President of the United States stated earlier today that 8 ships were able to make it through, but Bloomberg tanker data, nor our data that we were trying to get off a Marine tracker, showed that any ships went through the Strait of Hormuz today at all. So largely the statement by the President of the United States would factually be untrue, because we could not confirm independently ourselves, nor could anyone else out there confirm that even a single ship went through the Strait of Hormuz today from what we were able to tell. And if we go and look right now, I would largely expect we're probably not going to see a singular one, and we can actually see, let's see, what are these? Let's see, that's a Hong Kong container ship bound for Port Klang. This is also unfortunately I wouldn't know that flag, going to Sohar in Oman. And this is also a Hong Kong flagged container ship going to China, and they have specifically listed that they're Chinese owner and crew to try and avoid getting obliterated. So it doesn't appear that they've made it through the strait, and we're not sure if they're just going up to it and then about to turn around, because we've seen a lot of vessels doing that. But once again, at the moment right now, there's absolutely nobody transiting through the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, and there wasn't any over the course of the day from what we could tell or from what anyone else could tell out there in the greater world. I gotta say, I just wish we would work with reality instead of just coming up with stuff like we got a great gift and 90 ships have gone through the strait, or 8, or whatever numbers put out, when that's not happening. I wish we could just work off of what really is happening instead of whatever the president comes up with as fancy over the day. Anyways, moving on from that, we've also been able to hear that apparently the U.S. Navy is apparently beginning to deploy some unmanned drone boats built by the Maryland-based Black Sea Company into the Iranian war zone, according to Reuters, and we are awaiting any sort of proof of their usage. But that was a statement that did come out over the course of the day. While this is all going on, we've also seen that the United States is attempting to bomb and destroy significant missile cities, as we call them, which are underground missile complexes near to major cities inside of Iran. We have understood that 2 of them have been hit heavily so far, including the one near the city of Yazd, and today, the one near to the area of the city of Shiraz. To try and quickly show y'all the one that's near to the city of Shiraz, which I might be able to show y'all right here, there is a significant missile complex right here that has a large amount of tunnel complexes. You can see the entrances to in multiple different areas inside of this mountain range that allows for them to be able to store and access missile systems while they are under the protection of an underground facility, making it a lot harder to directly hit the ammunition and completely destroy them. Over the course of the day, the United States has been slamming this area in particular, as you can see it once again right there, and they are attempting to try and completely knock out this missile city as well, and while they are currently conducting these actions. We've also been able to see that they have apparently apparently been deploying some form of anti-tank mines in the area. This was a picture that was taken by an Iranian today on the ground near to the missile city in Shiraz, and apparently this is a US BLU-91B anti-tank mine from the Gator Scatterable mine system. Apparently we've heard that 2 Iranians have been killed by these mines so far in the area, and they were deployed over a village near an Iranian missile base. A little bit interesting with that, and it appears that we're trying to get someone with some mines, but I gotta be entirely honest with y'all, I don't know who the hell is going to run over something that looks like a damn Dutch oven in the middle of the street in, like, broad daylight. Like, who in the world's going to go, yes, Habibi, go drive our Lada right over that 1-foot-tall mine sitting in the middle of the street. Like, I gotta say, I don't know who in the hell even ran over one of these, but, you know.
Well, they usually launch the launchers at night, so they probably wouldn't be able to see them for the most part. And also, I'd imagine they're probably moving quickly, so it's possible that they might not see them. Like it's possible, and also even if they do see them, they have to stop and then try to go around it or something like that. So I guess it may be effective, possibly or not. But I will admit that that's a pretty large object to completely miss.
Yeah, that is a pretty big object to miss. I mean, you know, a crock-pot-sized, rice cooker-sized, Dutch oven-sized anti-tank mine sitting in the middle of the street generally will put off warning signals to me, you know, like maybe don't drive over that thing. And also, once it turns to broad daylight, I mean, these things are going to be easily visible everywhere. I mean, it's not like you're going to be able to miss them. It's a giant object in the middle of the street. And in the middle of fields, I mean, like, they just air scattered these things over the area. And I also got to say, folks, I don't think that laying a minefield in the middle of a village sounds to be well within the confines of the Geneva Convention. Seems to me like that might be in a very gray area or well within the area of that. I don't believe that's permissible under the Geneva Convention. I have to make sure and go look at the specific provisions. But it is a little interesting to see that we apparently are just dropping these all over the place. But moving on.
Geneva suggestion.
Oh, well, that's what a lot of people say. It's the convention. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get on up towards the area of Kermanshah, where we're also able to see some significant strikes within the city today.
Was that a missile city they hit out here?
I don't know on this one. It's up in the mountains, though.
I couldn't figure it out either. I thought it was a missile city. Like, that was my best guess earlier today in the short war video, but I couldn't quite say it with certainty.
Let's go take a look around, because you can tell them pretty easy. If we can find one. Let me see. So it'd probably be up in these mountains over here. And, I mean, well, maybe. Well, there are munitions facilities up here. These are hardened munitions bunkers, but it's not like a missile city to where their tunnel complex is built deep into a mountain. They're basically hardened shelters that are built on the side of a mountain, but not like, you know, a missile city. So it's an ammunition dump, but not a missile city type dump.
Interesting. So that must be what they got right there. Is I was thinking those are some pretty large hits. Like, it looks like there's some secondary explosions, some fires breaking out. So that must have been what they were going for with those strikes.
Yeah, I'd have to say, you know, it is quite interesting. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news right there, we've also seen, moving us on up into the Islamic Republic of Iran, a great deal of statements over the course of the day. And these have been rather interesting. But before I get into the statements, with a voice crack right there in the middle,
Holy moly!
That was one. That was one for the books. That was one for the books.
Cracking up like the officials. I tell you,
man. I tell you, man. The next thing you know, I'm gonna have to be on air doing this whole thing backwards. You know, or something like. But moving on from that, we were able to see throughout the area of the capital of Tehran. Apparently, the IRGC Joint Staff HQ was under attack by a U.S.-Israeli airstrike. We also were able to see explosions in Tehran in this clip right here. Oh, I can hear some anti-air fire. Saw a little flash, and that was that. We also got another clip here showing us more of what was going on in the city. We see some explosions in the distance from the airstrikes, once again showing that there are continued air campaigns over the capital of Iran at the moment. We also were able to hear that apparently this explosion did lead to some sort of a small earthquake of a sort, but everyone says that in Iran about every explosion, so take it for what you will. It's just a large explosion. Now it's time for us to get on into their government statements. And these have been really a treat. For one, we're now hearing that apparently hardline Iranians inside of the surviving parts of the Iranian parliament and the Council of Experts are wanting nuclear bombs. So they are really trying to go hardcore on saying that they should continue to nuclearize, once again showing that we're really kind of going in the opposite direction. Instead of denuclearizing them, they're actually wanting to rush to nuclearize now. We've also been able to hear that apparently Iran has not requested a pause on energy site strikes, according to the Iranian meteors in the Wall Street Journal. And this was one that was a little bit interesting here, because we were able to see, let me see if this will load, two separate statements over the course of the day. And I have to show y'all this statement here, because this is the one the Iranians are contending isn't even true, and then I have to go and show y'all what the President of the United States said later in the day. So, this was the statement. As per Iranian government request, please let this statement serve to represent that I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6, 2026 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by the fake news media and others, they are going very well. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So,
Oh man, I hated it when you put this out right here, because at first I thought I was going crazy. I thought, wait a second. I thought earlier in the day, I thought that the president himself said that the talks weren't going well and that the Iranians weren't taking it seriously. I thought that's what he said. And I was thinking, I must be crazy, or the president is crazy, one or the other. And it turns out he said exactly that earlier in the day. He literally said that the talks were, it's the other post, by the way. He literally said that the talks were not being taken seriously by the Iranians, and he said that right here in this post that you're looking at on the screen right here. He literally said they better get serious soon before it's too late, and he was griping about how the Iranian negotiators are, quote-unquote, very different and very strange. And then later he claimed that fake news media was the one saying that the talks weren't going well, when he's the one who actually said it.
So here was the statement in the morning, folks. Let me read y'all the morning statement by the president and then the afternoon statement by the president. This was the statement by the president of the United States in the morning. The Iranian negotiators are very different and strange. They are begging us to make a deal, which they should be doing since they have been militarily obliterated with zero chance of a comeback, and yet they publicly state that they are only looking at our proposal. Wrong. They better get serious soon before it's too late, because once that happens, there's no turning back, and it won't be pretty. So, this made it clear that the talks weren't going well in the early morning hours, which everybody then worked off of, because, you know, if the president's saying it's not going well, we'd assume it's not going well. So then everybody started working off of, apparently it's not going well because he's stating his frustration about the whole deal. And then later on in the day, after everybody had covered literally what he's saying about it, he then says this: as per Iranian government request, please let the statement serve blah, 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 blah. Talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by fake news media and others, they're going well.
Oh man. Oh my God, my aching head, Like, I mean, there's no way to explain this away, folks. This type of stuff right here. Like, this obviously, I mean, it's not too much to ask for consistent messaging. I mean, it's not like it was a mistake or he forgot or something. It was literally on the same day. It was literally, I think, what, like 10 hours apart or something like that. These two different statements were put out. I mean, this is crazy to put these two different statements out that are completely contradictory to each other that close together. I mean, it's hard to even follow it with this type of stuff happening.
I mean, and this is the crazy thing, folks. Like, here's the problem. Like, people say that we're just trying to go out of our way to criticize the president. We can't literally not criticize the president, because it's literally, like, at this point, folks, it used to be one thing one day and then the next thing the next day. Like, it would be like, Ukraine's a great country today and Zelensky's a bastard tomorrow. And it would flip-flop like that every day. Now it's literally within hours of each other. In the morning, the talks were truly going bad and they're about to get blown to pieces. And then 4 hours later, after everybody worked off of that statement to cover the situation, it then calls everyone a lying bastard for even quoting them and says they're going well. I mean, like, it's getting to the point, folks, that it's just wildly frustrating. You can literally see it in real time now, literally within the same day of coverage, that it's one situation in the morning, and then when you report that, what he's literally saying, then he calls you a liar for even quoting him, and then says a completely different thing. Like, it's really hard to work with at this point. So we don't know what the situation is at this point, because, you know, the president's just saying whatever the hell, so we have no clue. But I'll have to tell y'all, folks, I think I know what's going on. The Iranians aren't talking to us. That's the truth of it. And the war is going to be going on for a good while. That'd be my honest assessment. But, Matthew, what are people thinking about this in the moment right now? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we are hearing that U.S. forces are preparing a quote-unquote final blow with ground forces and air forces to end Iran's regime if these talks fall apart. And at this point, we're not really sure if talks are even taking place. We're not able to get a clear answer on that. So what is going to happen if the U.S. does this final blow, basically a clean break from the war? 54% said the U.S. will enter a prolonged war if this takes place, while 30% said the U.S. will defeat Iran quickly, and 10% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And this one is going to be a bit of a close one, I will say. If the U.S. does do a combined ground invasion of, let's say, an island, I'm not sure if that's going to go well for the reasons we stated multiple times in the past. Now, when it comes to aerial bombardments, the U.S. Air Force has done a fantastic job with that. They've largely taken out a lot of different sites, including naval facilities at Bandar Abbas. Largely, most of the propaganda vessels for the Iranian Navy have been destroyed for the most part, and we have seen a lot of their missile cities also get hit and also get taken out. But at the same time, though, I'm not sure if there is a clean break from this war. I'm not sure if there is like one final attack that's going to do this thing in. If that was the case, then how come we already haven't done it? Seems like we'd have done that already. So I think this might cause us to enter a prolonged war. I think we're already in it, to be perfectly honest. So I'm with the 54%. I think it'll probably drag out for several more months. And there's not going to be a clean break point in it. It's going to be a slow, very tumultuous war that keeps playing out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say that this is going to end up being a prolonged war. It clearly is right now, and that's not changing. And I just got to say, folks, it's just something else at this point. Like it's hard to even make sense of what in the world is coming out of the White House. Might as well just throw that out the window and not even consider it. The war is still going at this point, and it doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon. Also, a lot of people are in the chat as usual saying, oh, well, this is all a part of psychological operations. This is psyops. To what end? Like, let's think for a moment about those statements, because I've seen a million people say that. To what end is this working as far as psyops is concerned? If we are negotiating with the Iranians, the Iranians are presenting what they're willing to accept, and we're stating what we want them to accept. So regardless of whatever the hell the president's spewing on Twitter, that's not changing at all how these negotiations are going whatsoever. If he says that the talks are going poorly, that's not going to change the Iranian talking position. And if he says the talks are going well, that's not going to change the Iranian talking position. The Iranian talking position is set in stone. Those delegates on our side and their side have been told what they are willing to accept, what they're not willing to accept, and where their hard red lines are right now that they're not allowed to agree to cross. And so nothing that the president says is working psychological operations to change the way that the talks are going or to change anything with how the war is going. It's just saying stuff to say it. And that's where I think a lot of people are getting a little bit of confusion here, is that maybe if it was like the military conducting psychological operations in the Iranian military telling them that soldiers were surrendering en masse down at Bandar Abbas right now, that would truly be psychological operations. But telling the U.S. public that the negotiations are going poorly and we're about to bomb them harder, and then hours later telling everyone that they're liars for saying it's going poorly when he literally said it hours before, that's doing nothing but confusing the situation for the U.S. public, and it's doing nothing to change the situation for better or worse with the ongoing war. I think that's where a lot of people are getting a little bit confused. And if you are confused, I'm sorry about that, but I can't really help you with that. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get to some other news that we've also been able to hear out of the area as well, as we did see that the Iranians have once again tried to recruit the Houthis, and the Houthis have openly stated today that they are ready to respond if the Iranians give them the order to close the Bab el-Mandeb. The Bab el-Mandeb is a fairly significant strait, at least within the area of the southern Red Sea. To quickly explain the situation with this, the Suez Canal is a famous canal in the world that allows for passage between Europe and Asia, or generally the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, but the Suez Canal is really more so just a connector to allow ships to transit through the entirety of the Red Sea from north to south, and to the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean that way. That means that the Suez Canal isn't just its physical length that was dug by the French way back in the late 1800s. It actually is from Port Said all the way down to the end of the Bab el-Mandeb, which is this little narrow strait right here that includes the Hanish Islands. The Houthis have been able to try and conduct an iron grip on this in the past and have caused some decent logistics issues for global intermodal shipping because of that, and we're now hearing that apparently they're awaiting the orders by the Iranians to once again try to close the strait. If they do, It's not going to be as destructive as a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz in the long term, but it certainly will have an impact on intermodal traffic and the cost of shipping, as voyages will all have to generally go around the entirety of Africa, which will make those voyages 3 times longer in length and distance. And not only that, will make the cost of transit about 4 times as much due to the cost of fuel and the employment of the crew and every other factor involved in running those ships for that much longer of a period of time. That means that the Yemeni Houthis could try and get a little bit of a one-over on us as well, along with the Iranians closing off the Strait of Hormuz, because through that, not only are they completely shutting down the flow of oil out of the Middle East, they are also impeding the quick and efficient passage of intermodal container ships from their locations in Europe and America and across to Asia, at least from our East Coast and also from Europe itself. So that is also an ongoing and developing situation at the moment right now, and we're keeping an eye on that as much as we possibly can, because if they conduct an action such as that, we are going to see the short-term economic issues and the long-term economic issues will start to be exacerbated even a little bit farther more than they are right now. And I don't mean that it's going to be to the level of the Strait of Hormuz, but it is going to cause a little bit of additional economic strain. Moving us on from that, we've also been able to see a picture that came out today showing a KC-135 refueling a B-1 Lancer over the Middle East. That was pretty cool. We've also been able to see some additional news as well from inside of Israel that apparently the Israelis are shifting their war goals from the collapse of the Islamic regime to crippling their military-industrial base, which I have to say is a pretty significant step down. You know, the reason why we were trying to overthrow their regime was to stop their nuclear programs, their ICBM programs, and also their funding of terrorist groups. So now we've completely abandoned, apparently both us and the Israelis, that war goal, and we just moved down to let's cut their military down to size, which only helps us out for a very short amount of time and doesn't do anything to fix the 3 key issues that we had, which was their funding of terrorist forces, their continuing development of an ICBM, and their continued development of a nuclear weapon. So, a little bit interesting with that. We've also been able to see a Iranian missile in broad daylight today, actually deploying some of its cluster munitions over Israel. And we also were able to confirm, folks, that there were a decent amount of hits inside of Israel. It's just that we generally aren't showing most of those clips because it's fairly redundant at this point. Y'all can get the idea. Israel's generally getting hit over most of the country at this point, and it's just what it is at this point. But we can actually see the cluster deploying in air right there.
All Iran war crimes galore. That's what they are. Just war crime after war crime.
Yeah, the Iranians really are huge believers in the war crimes. We also saw that today in southern Lebanon, it appears that Hezbollah was able to attack a couple of Merkava main battle tanks of the Israeli Defense Forces with FPV drones, which is starting to show that Hezbollah is beginning to use drones, similarly to how the Russians and the Ukrainians are using their drone forces in the war in Ukraine, further on up north.
Wait a minute, is this new for them or something? Because I haven't really seen this before out of Hezbollah.
From what we know, this is fairly new. We've never really seen them use these to this degree before, or this kind of proficiency, so this is fairly new for them.
Yeah, that's quite interesting to see that. It looks like we're looking at the Ukrainian battlefield from this footage right here. That's wild to think this is Hezbollah attacking the Israelis.
And this appears to be Namer APC, which is built over the hull of a Merkava, but it doesn't have the turret. This is actually specialized as an armored personnel carrier, but it appears that they directly hit that vehicle. They didn't really show the aftermath of the damage, and we can't really see the Namer in this clip right here either, so we don't know if it ended up getting away unscathed or not, but now it appears they're going to try and target and knock out the Merkava as well if they can. And we see that coming on down onto the barrel of the tank, and which may have actually neutralized the main gun of the Merkava and forced it to withdraw to be able to have a new barrel put onto the tank, which requires a significant amount of time to replace. But moving on out of that clip, that does show us that there is at least some battle actions going on between the IDF and Hezbollah within southern Lebanon at this moment, and we will be waiting to see what further developments we can get out of that area. But also moving us over really quickly to our Gulf states to cover the developments there, we did get to see satellite photography today confirming that there is a thick plume of smoke coming from the Kuwait International Airport. It appears to be coming from the fuel tanks, which we were able to confirm were hit several days ago. And we've also heard that apparently 200 Ukrainian air defense personnel and experts are helping on the ground in the Middle East, but most of our Gulf state partners have recruited their support and help in trying to defend against incoming Iranian drone attacks with the resources available within the area. Once again, showing that the Ukrainian military is trying to do the best they can to support Western and American interests around the globe, even in this conflict right now. The Iranian state television also put out a threat today against the UAE's key power plants, showing all of them. And I gotta say, folks, I feel like Iran secretly hates the UAE more than they do Israel, because they strike the UAE more than they do anybody else, actually, according to the incoming fire reports that we've been able to get over the course of the whole war. It appears that the UAE has been hit more than the Israelis have been, which is absolutely crazy, to be entirely honest.
I still can't figure out why that is. I've tried to research it to figure out why Iran has such a beef with the UAE, because generally the UAE was generally friendly for the most part to the Iranians, or at least neutral at the worst. They weren't on bad terms with them. But yet at the same time, though, Iran has been hitting them so many times left and right. It's wild to see it. It's really unfortunate for the civilians in that country.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate, honestly. And it does appear that they're once again threatening to hit their power infrastructure today. But moving us on out of that, that is generally all of the news that we've been able to get from the Middle East over the course of the day. But before we move on from that, there is a big question that we have for all of y'all, and that's what y'all are thinking about the threat from the Yemeni Houthis about closing the Bab el-Mandeb, or as we call it, the Red Sea Strait. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so the looming piece of crisis that we're currently looking at is a potential blockade of the Red Sea Strait, because the only Iranian proxy force that has not joined the war against Israel and the United States is the Yemeni Houthis. And right now they are probably intentionally sitting on the sidelines waiting to be called up for intentional leverage purposes by the Iranians. So right now we are seeing that apparently the Houthis are vowing to wait for Tehran's order to blockade the Red Sea Strait. And how bad would this be if they actually carry this out? 46% said it would be critically bad because it's obviously major leverage. 23% said it could be somewhat bad. And 25% said it's a minor effect, it's very manageable. So it's a little bit tricky. I will say, I think it would be critically bad, to be straight up honest, not trying to sugarcoat it whatsoever. The Houthis know that this would be very damaging to the global economy, and they're holding off to use this as leverage, kind of like they're holding off striking the power infrastructure inside the Gulf states. They're also using that as leverage as well. So, that's going to give the Iranians a leg up in any type of negotiations with the United States, if they're even possible in the first place, which I'm not even sure if they're possible, because Iran's already stated their terms to negotiate are insane. So I think this could be ugly. If the Houthis actually carry this out and the Hormuz Strait and the Red Sea Strait is blocked, that could be horrendously bad. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it could be pretty bad. I would have to be with a 47%. But I also want to say that it's not going to be as bad as the closure of the Strait of Hormuz in terms of the impact. Intermodal shipping will still be able to continue, but it will take a longer amount of time for those voyages to complete, and it will also cost a lot more, which will raise the price of final good products because of the factored in shipping and handling internationally that it took to get it to the stores and the distribution points that y'all be buying them from. So it won't be as bad as the Strait of Hormuz, to where they can bleed us dry of most oil resources and see that the price of oil skyrockets and economic activity plummets as a result, or almost completely stops in some cases, but it will lead to increased prices of intermodal shipping goods, considering that most intermodal ships try to take the passage through the Strait of Hormuz to significantly cut down on time and keep to precision schedules that most major companies operate off of these days that sell in wares that are transported by intermodal container. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion.
Before we move on, by the way, just to give people the stats, I was trying to pull up the stats real quick so we can give some numbers behind this. So what's very important about the Bab al-Mandab Strait is mainly about trade, because it says here that up to a quarter of the world's goods ship through that strait. So that's a quarter. That's quite a lot of goods being sent through the strait. And we're also seeing that it also serves as another critical corridor for energy supplies for Europe from the Gulf. So that would obviously be a big deal. So mainly, I would say it appears appears to be, from the analysis I'm reading, that the Bab Strait being closed would mainly be more about the trade, while Hormuz is a little bit more about the energy infrastructure and also energy exports as well. So that would be the difference between the two.
And that is true. That's also what I was saying. Like intermodal traffic is usually like normal trade and normal goods. It doesn't have to do a lot with oil. It's really a whole other sort of shipping that goes through that area. It's not oil primarily like it is through Hormuz. So it'll have an impact to that degree, but it won't be completely dooming like the Strait of Hormuz. But this isn't just closing off a convenient passageway. This isn't completely shutting off access to, say, a critical resource like, say, oil from the Middle East. So there's that factor involved as well, at least at the moment. But there is another thing that I do have to say. That closure of the Bab el-Mandeb could actually lead to a lot of Saudi Arabian oil not being able to get out that is still trickling out at the moment, because the Saudis do have a pipeline that is able to transport about 5 million barrels of crude every day to the Red Sea coast near to Medina and other places. And so if they close the Bab el-Mandeb, a lot of ships, if they want to even access the very little Saudi oil that's getting out right now, will have to go all the way around Africa the long way and then go through the Suez to get to that port, load up, and then take the long trip all the way back to Asia if they wanted to even access it. So there is that inhibitor as well that could happen if the strait is completely closed. But a lot of people are also here at the moment talking about a wide variety of things. To be entirely honest, the chat has been flying over the course of the night. And I do have to say a big thanks to everyone so far for watching. We've had here at the peak tonight about 28,000 people. And over the course of the first hour, 131,000 people have watched this stream. And I got to say a humongous thanks to everyone so much once again for enjoying this channel. I hope that our news coverage has been up to spec and hopefully has been well researched and well analyzed at this point. And before we move on into the rest of our news that we have out of Europe, America, and also East Asia, I do want to make sure that we take a brief moment here to be able to address 3 questions from the chat and then move us on into the rest of the news that we have for the night. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
I will say the chat has been running off the rails tonight. Between moderating, honestly, the moderating has been a full-time job tonight, just trying to do that. Also writing the polls, putting those up, gathering the super chat questions, responding to people, also adding in some input on the air about the poll questions. It's been, they've been getting my money's worth tonight for sure, I would say. But anyway, so jumping into our first super chat, this one here is going to go to none other than Ukraine EN7ND. And thank you very much, Ukraine, for that $200 support, by the way. And we do appreciate that very much. He said, for your good work and also dinner.
Hey, and thank you so much for the incredible support. And thank you for helping us to be able to get a dinner. And I got to tell you that I've ate well today. I ate incredibly well. It was delicious. I can't say where, but it was fire, folks. It wasn't anything like, you know, high end and luxurious. It was. I'll tell you what the item was. It was a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich, but it was on fresh sourdough bread, and it had this really good sauce on it, and it was great. That was. I generally, folks, actually nowadays only eat about 1 meal a day. It's the diet that the president of the United States has advised me to eat. It's 1 piece of broccoli and 1 piece of boiled chicken. And so generally I don't really eat a whole lot these days. It's usually just 1 meal a day, and that was generally my only meal for the day, but it was really good and I really enjoyed it a great deal. And then I went for a little wander around the mountains, which was really nice. And Matthew did too, but he went to a totally different mountain. But it was a really good day today, and I got to thank you incredibly for the support and helping us to keep this work rolling and helping us to keep eating that dinner. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. But before we get to your next one, we actually have some breaking news coming out of this moment right now. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so this one actually is kind of pertinent to us, actually, somewhat. We know some individuals and things like that that serve in certain branches and stuff.
Oh.
But right now, we are hearing that Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado has been allegedly shelter in place. That's the order that's been issued, apparently, for that Space Force base. And it looks like they're saying there's a potential threat to the installation, and all gates have been closed. And that's what we're hearing. That's a preliminary report we're hearing right now. We don't know exactly what's happening at that location, and also waiting to corroborate that this is indeed the true announcement here. Excuse me. But it appears to be real, and it looks like other people are reporting it as well. But we had just seen as well, I think it was MacDill Air Force Base, they were dealing with an IED threat a few days ago. And in fact, they just indicted some people for apparently carrying that out for the most part. So now we're hearing another base is apparently undergoing a shelter-in-place order right now. So, Enforcer, what can you tell us about the Peterson Space Force Base, and also where's that located at in Colorado?
So the Peterson Space Force Base is actually located in Colorado Springs, near to the area of the Colorado Springs Airport. You can see it right here. And generally, while there is a element of air power that is directed out of this area by the United States Air Force, and I believe the Colorado Air National Guard, this facility generally serves as on-base housing for staff that operate not only at significant commands like Spacecom, which is right here within this building, along with, I believe, Northcom Command and the U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense HQ, which all of those three buildings are based in the same campus here at Peterson, but it also allows for staffing to operate the largest restricted facility within the United States of America, which is the Schriever Space Force Base, which conducts a large amount of cyber operations in support of U.S. forces in the offensive and defensive in the cyberspace, and also allows for the maintenance of vital U.S. satellite communication systems that are used currently by the armed forces. And also they have missile alerts and other things that are based out of Schriever. So this is a fairly important sort of a location. Peterson and Schriever are generally for continued U.S. cyber operations for the most part, because that's generally, actually, folks, to let y'all know, the Space Force really isn't the Space Force. There is a Delta, which is basically like their brigade and division structure in the Space Force, that does revolve around orbital warfare, but most, if not all of them, work around cyber warfare in general communication systems and structures of the U.S. military, which really is what the Space Force's current specialty is at the moment. So that's what might be affected, at least right now, because of this lockdown.
Well, geez, I hope it's all good on the base, because that's very concerning to hear. I'm seeing some people say that it's being reported on local TV, apparently around that area in Colorado Springs. And so, if anybody has any information for us that knows what's going on here, or is getting more information from the local station, y'all can let us know in the chat what y'all are hearing going on, because we're hearing it through the national news and also through national sources. Sadly, I don't have access to the local news in Colorado Springs. I'd have to set that up. But let us know, though, because I'm curious to see what's going on there at that base.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Hopefully everyone will remain safe out there, and I'm sure they will, but it appears that there's an ongoing situation. And we actually were able to hear, folks, that according to the FBI, there was apparently an improvised explosive device found at the front gate of MacDill Air Force Base, which is actually where CENTCOM HQ is based out of. And also that's a little bit confusing. A lot of people will be like, why the hell is CENTCOM HQ in MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida? It just is. There's really no better way to explain it. I mean, Southcom's HQ is actually in Miami. So it really is just where they picked it out to be. But we did hear that there was apparently an IED placed at the gate near to MacDill earlier in the day, and there may be a similar sort of a security situation happening at Peterson right now.
Yeah, it seems sketchy to say the least. I would say the allegations are, I think if I have this correct, I think they're alleging that two Chinese individuals, I think Chinese nationals actually, were the ones that were indicted. Once again, it's all allegedly, of course. In the United States, you're innocent until proven guilty. But if I have the story correct, I believe they are accusing Chinese nationals of doing that.
And that's interesting to hear. That might just be normal, People's Republic of China shenanigans. That might be the best way to put that, because they're always involved in some shenanigans, folks. I mean, it wasn't that long ago they sent over some college kid. Now, he was actually convicted, and he flew a recreational drone over the Norfolk shipyard and tried to take video and pictures of the propeller shafts and the propeller screws that were on the submarines that were being built, to try and get an acoustic profile of them back to China. And then he was put in prison and convicted for doing that. So that could just be normal China shenanigans, maybe, is the best way to explain that one. But we'll have to see what's happening at Peterson, because it might be completely different. But moving on from that, and thank you, Matthew, by the way, for sharing that breaking news. I also got to thank, once again, massively, Ukraine EN7ND for the incredible support, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the second question of this segment.
And the second one also goes to Ukraine EN7ND, who also puts in another $200 support. Absolutely whopping support tonight. We do appreciate that very, very much, by the way. That's by far the largest support from a single viewer tonight, and we do appreciate it. He said, I hope you guys watch Winter on Fire, and also life is rich when you don't want it to be.
And I thank you so much for the support. And I haven't personally seen Winter on Fire. We did see, I think it was, what was it, Matthew? 2,000 meters to Andriivka.
To Andriivka, yeah, I saw that one. That was a hell of a documentary there. That's a tough watch, but a very compelling watch if you're not familiar with how the front line works in Ukraine.
Yeah, already, it's crazy. We actually covered that one on air back in the summer offensive of 2023 when they were making it down this tree line to Andreevka, and they finally made it into the town, pushed the Russians out onto the other side of the railroad berm, and then they eventually lost it again. And we also watched them liberate Klishkivka around the same time, just a little bit further north of that. But we have watched that one. I haven't been able to watch Winter of Fire, because sadly we just don't have a whole lot of free time. And these days, honestly, folks, I'm trying to get back in shape, because there was a time in the channel's history when I actually was getting in shape, and y'all never got to see that on camera because we never went on camera during that time. And now I've gotten wildly out of shape again because of a myriad of things that happened after that, and it got me off of my exercise routine and everything. So I'm trying to get back in shape. So I'm trying to spend most of my time like getting out and exercising and stuff like that when I do have free time. But I will have to make sure to go and take a look at that because it sounds very interesting. So if I ever do get some free time to sit down and watch something, I'll definitely have to watch that because I've heard it recommended a whole load. Go ahead, Matthew.
Huh? I wouldn't say anything.
Oh, I heard it, man. I heard a little bit of spit in your microphone right there. It sounded like your mouth opened. I was like, he's about to say something. And then you
Man, I
didn't say it.
wasn't spitting. I don't know
heard
what
it.
you're hearing. No, literally no sound at all on my end at all.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Recommended a whole load. Go ahead, Matthew.
I didn't hear anything.
Man, I heard it on my end. I heard it through the Discord, man. Like, I was like, wait a minute, what's that? But beyond that, I hope that does address it the best I can regardless, and I will have to make sure to take a look at that Winter of Fire. It sounds like a very interesting documentary, but a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and I gotta thank you massively for that unbelievable support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be on to the rest of the news.
Also, by the way, nobody else heard anything either. Someone that Steve said, you're hearing things, man. Honestly, he's hearing things. I'm telling you, I'm being accused of spitting into the mic like a Gila lizard or something like that. Like, what the hell are you talking about, man?
You know what, man? I think I know what it might be. I heard it. I mean, I know I heard it. It might have been my headphone crackled for a second, like it made a little pop in the headset, and then I heard that, and I thought that was you, like, getting ready to talk. That might have been what it is, because I
always do the little yeah, like when you're talking to try to get the opening to say something. That's usually my cue. I'm never spitting into the mic to get a little cue.
Man, I'll be honest with you, man. I mean, like, yeah, like that's true, but I mean, at the same time, man, like that little popping noise. It was like a little smack thing sounding thing. I was like, that sounds like he's about to say something. So apparently I missed a cue right there. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And folks, I'm getting so discombobulated right now by that. I think I'm gonna go on our Twitter and I'm going to announce that the Enforcer channel is doing incredibly badly financially and we're about to collapse. And then 3 hours later, I'm going to call everyone who's quoted that a liar and say that the Enforcer channel has never been better and it's doing great and we're actually going to be growing and expanding the channel, and everyone's a liar who said otherwise. I'm getting that discombobulated. I think I'm about to go do that. What do you think, Matthew? You think that's a good idea?
I think that's a terrible idea right there. That's an awful idea.
Well, I'm going to do it because I can. But anyways, with that, we are on to the last one. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So our last one here of this segment, by the way, I will say this. I earlier, I did deny that I was spitting into the mic, but I will say that occasionally I do spit a few good, like pieces of advice here and there and stuff like that. Also, I do spit a few pieces of analysis from time to time. Some say I'm spitting. I can't deny. But anyway, so our last one goes to none other than Con45, who puts in a $100 support. And thank you very much, Con, for that massive support right there. And he's going to round out our first Super Chat segment. And he said, no politics, but he said the U.S. demands Donbass for Russia in exchange for U.S. guarantees. Zelensky. The U.S. will only provide security guarantees for Ukraine if Kyiv gives up all of the country's eastern Donbass region to Russia, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said.
I did hear that, and I find that interesting because it's like, what is the U.S. going to do about that if the Ukrainians refuse? Nothing. Because it's like, what do we give them? We were supposed to give them $800 million, I think, over the next 2 years, which is $400 million a year, which in military terms buys a Big Mac and some fries. I was thinking when I heard that today, I was like, they're not going to accept that because it's absolutely ridiculous. And also on top of that, what's the U.S. going to do about it when they say no? It's like nothing. And on top of that, with Europe remilitarizing how they have, they can generally carry on the war and support Ukraine on their own without the United States doing anything at this point, because they would be fine to do that on their own anyway. So that's generally what I'm thinking. I heard that as well today too, Con, and I listened to that and I was like, there's that usual shit. It doesn't matter, because stuff like that's been said. And then next week they'll flip flop and they'll actually say Zelensky's a great guy and all that stuff, and they should just freeze the front line where it is. I really, to be entirely honest with you, I hardly take anything that the U.S. government says at face value anymore, because if they've proven anything over the past year and 3 months specifically, compared to the past 3 years, it was kind of a lie here and there, and it was very clear to see that was a flat out lie. Every day they're lying at this point. Like, you can't even tell what they're doing because they just come up with everything under the sun and none of it's true. So I wouldn't really take it at face value.
Also, by the way, speaking of the Russians, apparently a delegation from the Russian State Duma apparently arrived in Washington and took a tour of the Capitol from the looks of it. I saw that on a video earlier today, which was very odd, to say the least, because we're literally on bad terms with Russia, but yet they're touring our Capitol building, which is weird. Also, they brought that ugly dude, the one that blocked us on Twitter. I can't remember his name right off the bat, but the one who's always coming over. Yeah, that's him. Special envoy. That fella right there. Dog ugly, by the way. Like, I don't say that about many people because I don't like to make fun of people for their looks, but that guy specifically, also he's a liar, to say the least. Dude lies like a dog on behalf of Putin. But he's also dog ugly, too. Like, he's got a lot of stuff in common here. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. You got to admit, listen, I'm not one for making fun of people, but that dude right there, oh, my goodness, that's a face that only a mother could love.
I got to tell you, I mean, this guy... he's rough. I mean, like that. Jeez.
My goodness gracious. I'm not a model myself, but I mean, shoo.
He looks like a milk chocolate milk dud that has got a little piece of like the lint stuck in your couch, like on the top of it. And then he's got chiclets for teeth. I mean, really rough, honestly. And also, he has this one tooth that's trying to escape. I believe it's trying to defect from his gums. And it's rather rough to look at, to be entirely honest with you all. You know what he looks like, folks? He looks like the thumb people from Spy Kids. Let me go pull that up. Here we go. Yeah, he looks just like that.
I'll tell you what, that guy right there, that fellow there, also, he's very sensitive, by the way. He blocked us on Twitter for merely calling out some bullcrap that he was saying, by the way. Apparently, he blocks people all the time, as it looks like we're not the only ones getting blocked by the guy. So, very interesting fellow here. But yeah, I believe he's a special envoy from Russia to the United States, and he's basically the direct liaison from the U.S. government to the Russian government, from the sounds of it. So, not very fond of this guy right here, to say the least.
Also, on top of that, by the way, folks, I've got to mention the irony of this. The representative who always talks about defending the Christian faith brought over this guy, and the Communist Party official from Russia, which, the Communist Party, by the way, folks, enforces state atheism, if you don't know, to really talk about the traditional values of Russia. Now, does that sound like stupidity to y'all? I'm not even getting political here, but when you talk about, like, when you have a really big talking point and it's a religious one, and then you literally bring over the representative of the Communist Party in Russia, which enforces state atheism as a party policy, doesn't it seem a little bit stupid? Like, just from that premise, much less the fact that it's the leader of the Communist Party. Like, maybe that ought to be, ringing a bell. I mean, that seems to me so stupid. It blew my mind. We're not even covering that tonight. It's so stupid. I couldn't even cover it in the news. But the fact that Matthew brought that up right now, I was just blown away. Like, this woman who invited them over talks every day about how the Ukrainians are persecuting Christians and so on and so forth, which is just straight bullshit. And then she brings over the Communist Party, which literally persecuted Christians.
She ought to be expelled from Congress. Like, I'm not even trying to be political with that. Like, if it was anybody from any party, I don't really give a damn about what party they're from. Anybody that's that friendly with basically an enemy state like that, even if it's just like, just for appearances, it's like, I mean, what are we doing here? It's like we're chumming up to a country that literally has it out for us. They're literally providing weaponry right now to the Iranians to hurt our guys in the Middle East. It's like, why are we chumming up to these people? And why she specifically keep on being so friendly with these people? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's really something else. You know, it's funny to me how they always talk about, like, like, look at these guys. They're definitely aligned with China. It's like, nothing says that you're aligned with the enemies of the Republic, like bringing over the Russians while they're helping to get American soldiers killed in the Middle East, and then also bringing over the leader of the Russian Communist Party. It's like, nothing ever says selling out the country more than that. Like, I haven't seen anything like that in recent times. I mean, imagine, folks. Imagine that. I mean, like, it's hard to even comprehend that happened today. And they got a private tour of the Capitol and everything. It was ridiculous. But anyways, it is time for us to move on, folks. And it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news that we have that's not from the Middle East. We do have a little bit of additional news coming out of Washington, D.C. today, as we were able to hear that apparently, according to the President of the United States, he stated that this is a test for NATO, and if they don't help us, we're going to remember. There was also an additional statement made that the U.S. has always been there for NATO, and they were always going to be there for NATO, but with how things are going right now, that might not be the case. I guess we forgot about the last part of last year, at the beginning of 2025, when we threatened to leave NATO if they all didn't spend 5% of GDP on their military, and also the other part at the end of last year when we threatened to invade Greenland and end the entire NATO alliance to take control of Greenland, whether they wanted us to or not. I guess we forgot about being there for NATO on them that 2 times last year, but, oh well. Anyways, moving on from that, we also have gotten some news out of the United Kingdom, as the United Kingdom has authorized His Majesty's Armed Forces to board Russian Shadow Fleet tankers whenever they're in range of British forces, and to seize them in the name of His Majesty the King. So it does appear that the British will now be enforcing their sanctions a lot more militantly, and will be using the British Armed Forces to do so. Also, moving us over into Southeast Asia for a brief piece of news, we have also been able to see that the Chinese have unveiled a brand new drone system today on Chinese state television.
Oh, look, they have flaps that open and close.
Wow.
In America, we have automated garbage cans that do that if you wave your hand over it.
Man, but these guys, oh, look, it's a t-shirt cannon launcher in each of them. That's neat.
And what's it launching? Drones?
Yes, it's launching little drones.
Huh, you know something? That design looks somewhat familiar. Go back for a second where that thing literally just launched and deployed its wings for a second. Take a look at this. Play for it a little bit. That's very weird. Do you know what that looks like?
For some reason, man, that's reminding me of a Switchblade drone.
Yeah, that reminds me of a US-made drone right there. That's very reminiscent of that. It's almost like the Chinese copied our drone to a certain degree. That's very weird. That looks just like that, actually. I wonder if it's a coincidence.
That is a Switchblade.
Man, I tell you what, the Chinese and copying stuff, I mean, their government just copies the hell out of everything we make. Like, that's literally like a replica Switchblade.
That is crazy. I mean, it really is. So then we could see them here apparently operating them and an AI swarm of some sort. They're like, look, we could do formations and tricks with these. And then they show them targeting and hitting something on the ground. What is it? It is a supply truck of some sort. It looks like it's supposed to be a Chinese one, just to make it ambiguous. And then we can see it hit it and slice right through it. And they're like, look, we did it. So, interesting.
Oh, wow. That's impressive tech right there. If only, they wouldn't have taken it from the United States. It's impressive.
Man, the Chinese are like, look at this brand new innovation. It's literally just something we did like 8 years ago, but they copied it literally identically. Man, that I have to tell y'all, folks, if y'all ever grew up in school and Xi Jinping was next to y'all, I hope that y'all covered up your test with your hand while you were like filling out the answers, because I'm sure that if he was there, he would have copied them letter for the answers. Like, make sure to keep that in mind, folks. If anyone from the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese Communist Party, or maybe even the People's Republic of China at large, is nearby to you when you're conducting a test at college or grade school, make sure to cover up the test. They might copy the work. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get back into Europe. The Ukrainian Armed Forces, getting us on into the war in Ukraine, by the way, folks, because this is now the War in Ukraine news segment. We were able to hear that the Ukrainian Armed Forces have conducted a significant attack today, once again, against the Russian Federation. Several targets were hit over the course of the day, including Nizhny Novgorod and Perm, which we sadly don't have any video evidence for, but we do have a lot of video evidence coming out of the Leningrad military oblast again today, because it came under attack again today. And we were able to see a little bit of the airspace situation in this clip right here. Oh, hush, little one. It's nothing. It's just falling debris.
Вон, летит.
Летит.
And which city is this right here?
This is St. Petersburg, блядь.
Она дальше.
Oh.
Или сейчас грохнется.
Сейчас, она сейчас упадет, это эти.
О,
And
жужжит.
she's stuttering a little bit concerned about the strikes in the distance, apparently.
Жужжит где-то.
Man.
Маша, отойди от окна.
Before we move on to the next one, I just saw someone in the chat say, "Is that really how you talk? You sound like a sports broadcaster." Yes, we were born talking this way, actually. No joke. This is just how we talk naturally. Like, even when we're off air, we talk like that. But moving on from that, we also saw a ongoing drone attack on the Leningrad region. Let's take a look. Huh?
Летят. Я же говорю, это с Пегелева летит.
And then we have one more clip showing us St. Petersburg under fire. Oh, that's the same clip as before. It's a duplicate. Sorry, folks. Well, this ain't a duplicate. Let's take a look at this one right here. I wonder what we're about to witness. Oh, look, it's Ust Luga, and it's still a roaring inferno. It got hit again today.
Also, by the way, the Russians claim they shot all the drones down, by the way. They said that 20 of them were sent to go hit Ust Luga again. They said all 20 were shot down and the attack was repelled. I think these photos right here, it has to be AI.
I think it has to be, Matthew. I think it has to be. But moving on from that, we also got to see Ust Luga burning in this clip as well, which we were able to see right here.
Oh.
Man, this kind of looks like Pearl Harbor. Like, honestly, like in the pictures from back in the day. I mean, the Ukrainians are going around laying down some damage.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Pearl Harbor. Japan should have warned us before they did that.
They should have warned us about that. Why didn't they warn us about Pearl Harbor? Anyways. It's cooking. That we can be assured of. We also were able to see one last clip from Ust Luga showing that thing still on fire. Let's take a look at the current attacks that happen on Ust Luga. Yeah, but.
This is so bad right here. The Russian air defense is doing such a pitiful job of shooting the stuff down before it gets to like the Leningrad region and Ust Luga and Primorsk that they're literally trying to claim today that all the Baltic states opened their airspace for Ukraine to send the drones through to avoid all their air defenses. It's like, it's nothing that fancy. It's just that you don't have good air defense. That's the simple answer. It's going straight through Russian airspace.
Oh man, we're about to get to that, by the way, here in a little bit. I actually have that down to cover. So make sure to get the poll hot and ready on that one, like a little Caesar's pizza.
We have one running right now.
Oh, I know. We're gonna get to this one right after this clip, so that way we can get that new poll up, because that's the next topic, actually. But moving on from this clip, we do have to circle back, folks, to the situation with the British and the announcement of His Majesty's Armed Forces beginning the seizure of sanctioned tankers whenever they come into distance of His Majesty's Armed Forces. That means that when the Royal Navy pulls up next to one of the tankers, they're going to go, "You have conducted great sanctions evasions against His Majesty's government," and then they'll also be putting them in His Majesty's prison. But outside of that, a lot of people are talking about whether or not this will cause a war, and seems like a lot of people are united in this one. But Matthew, what are you thinking about this, and what are they thinking about that as well?
So Sir Stormer and the British, they've decided to get a little bit hostile with the Russians. They say, "We're going to put our foot down today, Governor, and we're going to make sure that no more Russian Shadow Fleet tankers make a shadow through our waters." So will it cause a war? 66% said no, Russia will simply make threats about it. 23% said yes, Russia will aggress on Britain because they have it out for them. 7% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And Russia so far has not carried out any of their threats. If y'all recall, the Russians said they were going to put mercenaries on the ships. We haven't seen that yet. They also said they were going to send out Russian naval vessels to escort these ships through enemy waters, and they have not done that either for the most part. So it's a lot of hot air at this point. So I think Russia will simply make more threats. I don't think they're actually going to start a war with Britain, but they're definitely going to lay the threats on heavy. I can promise you that. So I'm with the 66%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say they're probably going to make threats only because the Russians aren't going to go to war with Britain. It's a nuclear armed power. And not only that, it would be a fight that they would generally probably end up losing because the whole of Europe would join in to help out the British if it came to that. But also, what's going to be funny, folks, is that they're not even going to seize these tankers for sanctions evasions. Like, the British are going to come up to Matthew, they're going to be like, "It's the Royal Navy, let us on board and inspect the vessel." And the Russians are going to be, "Oh shit, they're about to seize the ship and arrest us all. Come on board." And then the British come around and they spend like 3 hours on the ship, and when they're leaving, they sit there and go, Yes, I checked everything on the clipboard. It looks like everything's
Yeah.
in order here. Wait a minute. And then they look into a crew quarters. Is that a television running, playing the BBC Channel 1? You have a television license?
you know-
shit.
You know what's crazy is the Shadow Fleet tankers are the least of Britain's concerns because we've seen over the past few months that a Russian submarine has gone past British waters. We've seen that, and I think there might still be lurking around. So that's a problem. Also, the Russian spy ship, which shows up occasionally and also we believe might have a submarine in tow with it, it also has been lurking around the UK's waters as well. So, I mean, they have a lot more to worry about than just Shadow Fleet tankers. They got a lot to worry about. So it's about time that Britain did something, and it looks like this is the first step they're taking is the Shadow Fleet tankers.
It certainly does appear that that is the case. But I got to tell you, Matthew, they better make sure that when they go into the anywhere near British waters, they have those TV licenses squared away, because if they don't, God forbid, they're going to really come and get them now.
Yeah. Or a radio license. It's like, what if the Russian spy ships like transmit some spy details back to Russia, and all of a sudden the British show up on a dinghy, like on the side of their like ship, talking about, "Do you have a license for that radio, Governor?" The Russians are like, "Huh?" It's like, damn, bro, those British they're militant about those radio and TV licenses, I tell you.
Yeah, man. So some Russian guy's gonna be on one of those ships. He goes, stupid British," and then he's gonna get on Twitter, stupid, idiot British, stupid people, peace and burn in hell. And then he's going to hear of like a knock on the like door of his crew quarters. He's gonna be like, what is that, Blair? He's gonna open it. "Stop right there. You're making hateful comments on social media. Where did you come from?" "I spawn." I just appear. It's how I do it. You're under arrest. Oh man, dude, it's gonna be something tough for them when they go through British waters, I tell you, folks. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us now to get on into the rest of our news from the St. Petersburg area, and to give enough time for Matthew to put up that poll on the thing that he was just talking about a moment ago with the drones flying through the Baltics and all that claimed by the Russians. But moving us on, just to give a moment for that poll to exist and then grow in terms of the votes, we have been able to hear that in Vyborg, they are actually able to see the fire at Primorsk, which is about 30 miles away. That ought to give you an idea of the size of that fire. In Primorsk, it just looks like broad daylight right now from this thing, but here's the clip all the way from Vyborg. Look at that.
Damn.
Man, what a beautiful sight.
Это горит, что ли, что-то или что? Какие-то хлопки еще были. Ебать зарево. Охуеть.
It's a dead fire.
Ярче и
As you can
ярче.
see out in the distance, it's combusting and burning. Look at it, hydrogen and oxygen mixing together to create fire and combustion.
It is beautiful, Blair. It is perfection. But moving on from that, we now have to get to the real issue today. These attacks are so embarrassing for the Russian government, they have started to lay claim to something that's absolutely absurd. They have claimed that the drones are not actually flying all the way through Russia to get to St. Petersburg. They're actually taking the even longer and more arduous route through Poland and the Baltics. But the thing is, folks, is that they didn't blame Poland for this today. They only blamed the Baltic nations, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, for that instead of Poland. And the problem with that, folks, is that it's geographically impossible for Ukrainian drones to fly just through the Baltics without them flying through Poland or Belarus. So this Russian claim doesn't even make any sense at all. And also it appears that the Russians are trying to cover up their own sheer incompetence. The fact that these things are flying about 700 miles through Russia to a target, and none of them are being shot down or even attempted to being shot down before they're about to hit their target. So a lot of people are currently talking about this one right now because this is one hell of a claim. It's absolutely absurd. And it appears that a lot of people are talking about what's happening with this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so Russia is starting their classic narrative operations, as Next to TV also pointed out in their Twitter post. And now that Russia's claiming the Baltic states have opened their airspace for Ukraine to launch drone attacks on Russia, and they're trying to use this as an excuse for why their air defense hasn't shot down any of the incoming weaponry that's hitting their ports, their export terminals, and also just military targets in the area. So what happens now? 56% said it's false, obviously. It's bad Russian cope, while 20% said it's true. The Baltic states are involved, which is crazy. 16% said it's possible but unlikely. And I can guarantee you the Baltic states are not letting the Ukrainians launch drones through their airspace. They know that if Russia found out about something like that, that would pretty much start a direct conflict, and it would give Russia every type of basically justification they need to do something to the Baltics. And we've already seen Russia start, by the way, because remember, just the other day, we heard that I think it was what? It was Estonia, and who was the other country that had a drone launched at them from Russia?
Latvia.
It was Latvia as well. So Estonia and Latvia had drones launched at them from Russia. So we've already seen that Russia's aggressing against the Baltic states, and now we're hearing today that they're alleging their airspace is open for attacks on Russia. So to me, it seems like it's obviously false, but it seems like Russia is preparing to escalate against the Baltic states. And right now, I will say the Baltics are kind of in bad shape because the United States is kind of making it sound like they're really not willing to adhere to the NATO charter for the most part. They're making it sound like we're kind of backing out of the NATO Article 5 obligation. At least that's the statements that we're hearing. Maybe they'll follow through if it was ever invoked, but right now the odds of that happening are kind of a little bit shaky. So Putin might be feeling emboldened by that, and now he's also sending drones into their airspace. So I think it's something that's going to come out of it. I think Putin's planning something, but we'll have to wait and see what it is. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it's absolutely false. I mean, it's an absolutely outlandish story, absolutely ridiculous to every degree. Need I say more? Need I say more, folks? I mean, how stupid would it be for the Ukrainians to take the longer route, which would be through these countries, instead of just launching them through Russia instead? That would be absolutely asinine. It'd make no sense. And I mean, we've seen these things flying in, heading north, not coming from the east. So it would make a lot more sense that these things did fly through Russia, given all the facts and circumstances, and also that'd be absolutely stupid for all of these countries, including Poland and the Baltic states, to be in some sort of a conspiracy to allow the Ukrainians to fly the drones through their countries, when in reality that would unnecessarily escalate the conflict, which most of those countries have been trying to avoid. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and I'm sure, folks, that the mighty Russian military and the Russian government is doing just fine. Oh, Putin's begging for money. Apparently Putin's a homeless man now because he's actually demanding that the oligarchs donate to budget the war as the costs are still soaring.
Man, that's crazy. Honestly, that's not asking. Basically, Putin's demanding that the oligarchs give money over, because can you imagine if the oligarchs don't give money and donate to the Russian government? I would imagine there's consequences if they don't do that. So basically, Putin's cashing in on the people that he's helped basically become rich, and he's telling them, you'll either support our government and keep us running while I literally drive the country to the ground, or there could be consequences.
Yeah, it's a crazy one to hear. Like, it's the fact that the Russian government is so poor at this point, folks, that they're basically going to go rob the oligarchs that are left of all of their money to try and keep the war going. That ought to be giving everyone an idea of how badly this really is going at this point for the Russians. I mean, a country isn't winning. Like that would be like the U.S. government going and just like picking Elon up, tipping him upside down, and shaking them until all of the money falls out to try and keep funding the war in Iran. I mean, if the U.S. government started doing something like that, you know we're in a really bad spot financially to keep that war going. And the fact that the Russians are doing this now to their oligarchs, I mean, that ought to be giving us a pretty good idea that things are going quite poorly for them, and there's really no question about that at this point.
Yeah. And also Jeff in the live chat, he said, well, how much is Putin donating? That's a good point. It's like Putin is believed to be one of the wealthiest people on the planet, but his net worth isn't known necessarily, because obviously there's no real way to track what's his and what's the Russian government's money. It's kind of intertwined to a large degree. So, I mean, you don't hear about Putin donating any money. I certainly haven't heard anything like that. But yet at the same time, he's demanding all these other guys that are the oligarchs that they need to hand over their money to the Russian government. It's just wild. Like, it makes you wonder how much more the Russian people are going to take of this, because ultimately the oligarchs are the people that hold power inside of Russia, outside of the Putin regime. They're the ones that hold power. So it's like, at what point do the oligarchs start conspiring with each other to start, forming some type of uprising? It seems like it could be possible.
Man, an oligarch's going to come in. Mr. Putin, I have this money. I want to keep it. And Putin's going to go, yes. Do you have any mental illnesses? Mental? Yes, I think you're quite ill. I believe that the doctor has told me that you're prescribed window treatment. One time, from 10 stories. Oh, God. Yes, you'll have to give over the money, or else we'll have to subscribe this very advanced mental treatment upon you. oh, okay. Like it's bro, and then they're gonna start handing over the money, and then he'll throw them out the window anyways after they're broke, because then they'll be useless. But anyways, moving on from that, it's now time for us to get on into the bit of news that we've been able to get out of the war in Ukraine. Let me just move that marker right there so it's accurate. Moving us on down and into our casualty report for the day, we have been able to see that the Russians have taken quite some significant loss. Oh, 2 Bobcats.
Oh, look at
Hey!
that. They rounded out the number, a nice clean 4,100 special equipment. So I got to say, that's a nice number.
I gotta tell you, what a round, nice number. And according to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, 2,038 drones is the 9th highest daily loss, and 201 vehicles and fuel tanks is the 17th highest. Over the course of the past 24 hours, we were able to hear that 1,210 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 4 APCs, 201 supply trucks, a main battle tank, 49 artillery pieces, 2,038 drones, 2 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. What an impressive day. What a wonderful day. And we were able to see a little bit of that at work on the front. Now, sadly, we didn't get a whole bunch of frontline clips today because there weren't really a lot of them that came out. But moving us on down into the Pokrovsk area, we did get to see the Ukrainians did take out a Russian BM-21 Grad. Let's take a little look at that. Oh, what the devil? And a Russian artillery piece.
What do we have here?
I mean, sit there and call him a steamship, but, whoa, look at that boiler, whoa. Moving on from that, we also got to see them hitting Russian logistics down in the 65th Ronin unit. The drone forces are working hard today as usual. Oh, heavens. Would you look at that? The Russians are getting slammed left and right. It's rather tragic, really, you know?
You know, something fascinating is I just realized that there's been some new details that have come out about you remember the Barksdale incursion of those drones that flew over Barksdale Air Force Base, the home of the B-52 nuclear bombers. It looks like some more details came out about what the drones were and also how advanced they truly were. And it sounds like there was a lot more to that story than we heard previously.
Oh, really? Spill the beans.
So they're saying, this is the report, they're saying that the drones that flew over Barksdale a while back, I think it was like a week or two ago, it's hard to keep up with the time anymore because of how much stuff's happening, but they're saying the drones had non-commercial signals. We did hear that. We also heard that they were resistant to jamming. They said they came in waves of 12 to 15, and also apparently they had long-range control links. And they were way more advanced, according to eyewitness reports, than anything ever seen in Ukraine or Russia. And they're also well beyond Iranian capabilities as well. So to me, that sounds like a Chinese drone right off the bat. Like, unless we're going to go with something crazy like it's aliens or something like that, which I'm not going to go with something like that. It sounds like most likely candidate is probably China for the most part. And also the fact that they literally just indicted 2 Chinese nationals for trying to put an IED next to one of our bases. I mean, that wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that's probably China that's behind this as well at Barksdale. And apparently, nobody ever shot them down for the most part of it. They just let them fly over for several days in a row for multiple hours a day, and nobody ever shot them down. I'm not really sure if they had the ability to shoot them down, but it seems like they would have. Maybe they evaded air defenses possibly, or maybe they didn't try to shoot at them at all. But that's definitely concerning. Apparently, there's more to the story.
That's interesting, and that does sound like it might be Chinese reconnaissance. It wouldn't be out of the question, to be entirely honest with y'all. They do that kind of stuff a lot. It actually wasn't that long ago that the Norwegians arrested like 6 Chinese nationals for attempting to spy on one of their bases further on up here near Svolvær, right here. And apparently they were hanging out near to this, I believe it's this military airstrip right here or something like that, and they were trying to get photography and video of Norwegian military bases, and they actually ended up getting arrested and I believe found guilty, if I remember the story correctly, but I'll have to go back and look and make sure that is correct. But anyways,
It's interesting that China, if this is China, it appears they're changing tactics because remember during the last U.S. administration, you had that massive, situation with the Chinese balloons flying over, and it happened multiple times. And there was a whole, debate about whether or not the U.S. should have shot them down earlier, which I think most people agreed that they probably should have, but they weren't. Ultimately, they were shot down, but by the time they had flown over a whole bunch of sensitive sites. So it looks like they've changed strategies. They've gone from high altitude surveillance. Now they're moving to basically human intelligence. They're putting people on the ground for the most part, having them launch drones, and we're not even sure if they came from U.S. territory or if they came from the coast. We don't know where these things came from, and the military is being very tight-lipped about it. They're not really saying anything.
It is quite interesting, really, and we'll have to keep an eye on that and keep interest and study upon that topic. But moving us on, folks, into our... Actually, there's one last piece of news that we have to cover out of Washington, just to make sure we covered it. Okay, so we did cover it. So, moving us on to our last piece of news for the day, we are going to be moving on down into Bryansk port. Sadly, we weren't able to get the clips, but we did get this one picture today from a Ukrainian drone, and they have stated, the Ukrainians did, that they conducted another attack on Bryansk port and the Russian naval forces that are based here. So, we do not know the damage at the moment. We do not know what ships may have been lost or hit, and what kind of damage may have been caused to port facilities, but we were able to confirm that there was another attack on Bryansk port today. And with that, that is the end of our news for the day. Sadly, there was no speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, so sadly, restroom breaks will have to be rationed for tonight, because usually that's what we use the speech for. It's kind of like an intermission for us to get a drink of water, go to the restroom, all that stuff, get sorted out, and then keep the show running. But, we don't have one every day, so sadly, we don't get to do that today. But that means that we're going to be moving immediately on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it is an absolute blast. We get to talk about literally anything and everything, except for religion, politics, climate change, and whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. And I have to tell y'all, folks, that today has been quite a day, quite a wonderful day. I mean, the news has been, it is what it is, but it has been quite a nice day, folks, because Matthew and me, we got out and wandered around today, not in the same place. We went to separate places, but we went to some trails, both of us did, but they were in different parts of the city, and it's so nice out here, folks. The temperature is really nice in the middle of the day. It's like in the mid-60s. Everything's in bloom, so all the dogwoods and the cherry trees and stuff around here are in full bloom, so you get like these giant, like, flowering trees of white and pink and purple and everything everywhere. And also, folks, I went up to a trail today, once again, on the Wasatch Front on Lone Peak, and it was so cool, folks, because the birds were chirping. There was a mule deer literally on the side of the trail that I just walked by, and it didn't really care. It was kind of like Disney World, like, like a Disney movie almost. And there was butterflies everywhere. So such a nice day. It was a wonderful day to go out and wander around. So it was a pretty decent day, all things considered. And I had a great BLT before I went on that little hike. It was a wonderful time. It was a great time. Matthew, would you like to tell folks a little bit about your day? Would you?
Yeah, I went on a 4-mile hike today. It really was good weather. I will say this, though. I was very paranoid because it's getting warmer out here in Salt Lake City, and the rattlesnakes usually start coming out around this time as it's getting sunny outside. The snakes like to get out in the sun as well. So I was like, dang, I hope there's no rattlesnakes out here. But I was like, who cares? I'm going hiking anyway. But I went for a 4-mile hike, though, back towards Harriman. It's back there. It's like a reservoir or something back there in Harriman. I forgot the name of it. It's like Ridge something reservoir, but it was very nice. It's got a whole like beach with it and stuff like that. I didn't even know it was back there. But I just sent you a picture on Discord, by the way. You can show people the general route I took if people are curious. It was a pretty nice hike. You could see the entire Wasatch Front from the hike all the way around. It had a pretty decent elevation too. It was like, I think 500 feet at the steepest elevation. But sadly, I wanted to go to the peak of that mountain that you're looking at right there on the picture. I wanted to go to the peak of it, but the problem was I don't have the right shoes for it. So my shoes are tennis shoes. They're flat bottom shoes. There's no grip to them hardly at all. So I got to get better shoes, and I want to go to the top of some of these mountains around here. Not just this one, but also other ones too.
And let me see, folks. Let me upload some of my pictures that I took today. I don't even think I've sent most of these to you, actually, Matthew. But let me get a couple of them to show y'all what it looked like out there today, because it was rather nice. It was rather nice, and I was having a good time with it. So let me get these pictures loaded up really quickly from my phone, and there we go. And let me show these to y'all here really quickly. You can actually see them, Matthew, and I'll just be starting from the top so that you can follow along if you want to comment on anything. So sadly today, folks, there was a little bit of pollution in the valley, so there was a little bit of smog, so whenever I take pictures looking towards the city, there's like a pretty significant haze on it, and it also kind of blurred the sky in the picture. It didn't make it look as blue as it really was. But this little trail right here is a really nice one. It starts near to a little Mormon church that's like 600 feet below where I was at in this picture right here, and then you get to meander around the mountain and stuff. It gets you up to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, which pretty much follows the whole bottom base of the mountain for the most part, like 500 feet up from like the normal ground level at the very base of the mountain. But I was wandering around this, and it was so nice. It was a really nice place. Like, you could see the mountain and the canyons behind you as you were walking, and you'd have to walk through them a little bit to get around the rest of the trail. That's what the trail looks like. Oh, I'm on the fourth picture, by the way, Matthew, right now, if you're following along. This one looks so cool. Like, they have, like, I don't know what type of trees these are because I'm not really familiar with the natural trees or the natural range of trees they have in Utah. I knew a lot about Alabama trees, but I need to learn a lot about the Utah trees. But I like these. They kind of reminded me of like those old sycamores that you hear about in like the Middle East. I thought they were really cool looking. And then moving on to the fifth picture, you can see one of the peaks of the mountain, not the actual peak, Lone Peak, but it's one of the ones near to it, looking up the valley. And then you could see the trail again, you know, looking out into the city. And you can see the city itself with all of the nice trees in bloom. You can see some of them actually blooming right there. And you can also see the beautiful mountain with some snow actually still at the top of it right now. It was so nice. It was incredibly nice. And I was absolutely enjoying it. I actually got a little winded, folks, because I'll be honest with y'all, I am not in great physical shape. So, you know, doing like, it was like a 600 or 700 foot vertical like gain today on that trail. Like, it was actually pretty steep. And the only reason I was able to do it is because at like 400 feet up, I just stopped and literally sat down on a large rock in the middle of the trail. It took like 15 minutes to catch my breath. And then I started up the hill again because I was like, huh?
I mean, go ahead. I was going to butt in and say something.
Because I was like I saw like this really nice view that might be coming around the corner. I was like, dang, I can't stop now. I got to see what else there is. And so then I like got up and just kept going after like 10 minutes of a breather. And the views were really amazing beyond that point. Actually, it was well worth like getting a breather and then continuing on to heights I'd never been to before. Because in Alabama, folks, relative to like the floor level, if I did the same climb in Alabama from the base to the peak of the tallest mountain in Alabama, I would have actually made it from the base to the peak of that mountain today on this little wandering around. And here in Utah, that made it nowhere.
Yeah, well, I was going up the steepest part of my hike, up the side of that mountain in Harriman, and I was going up, and I was thinking, "Dang, I'm in pretty damn good shape. I'm going up this thing at pretty consistent pace." And then I heard behind me, "Oh, hi, how are you?" I turned around and looked, and there was this woman just coming like straight up the incline, which was pretty steep, and she was just running up it like it was nothing, and like not out of breath or anything. I was like, "Oh yeah, hi." I just had to stop and just stare for a second as the woman went running by. I was like, what the hell? I was like, I thought I was in decent shape, which I'm in pretty decent shape, I will admit. But I was like, there's always somebody that comes along that's like running like a super athlete or something like that. I'm like, well, there's always somebody better. It kind of humbled me for a second. I was like, well, I'm not in that great a shape. I can't run this whole thing. I'd be dead by the time I got done doing that.
Also, by the way, I got to tell you this crazy story that happened. I'm kidding you not, Matthew. This deer looked just like that one. You know, it's like the chubby-cheeked deer, like that one right there. So
Yeah.
I was going up the trail, and let me see if I can actually show y'all that part of the trail that I was going up. So it was this one right here, and they don't have anyone that's gone up it. I guess like no one wanted to deal with. Well, actually, that's kind of close to where it was, sort of. Well, this is actually way up above the trail, but this is kind of like where it is. But anyways, I was walking up the trail and I heard some rocks and like some limbs rustle near me, and I looked up because I was looking at all the rocks because it's a very rocky trail and you can slip and really like hurt yourself if you're not paying attention. So I looked up and to the right, and there was this mule deer, literally looked just like that one, just staring at me from the literal edge of the trail. And I looked at it and went, "Oh, hello." And then it just sat there and it just kept looking at me. I thought the hello might like get it scared off and like get it moving. And it just kept looking at me. And I was like, well, I was like, oh, well, I guess it's it's an unfazed deer. So I walked away. And then when I got like further on up the trail, I looked back, it was still kind of in the same spot. It like turned a little bit, and I guess it was like eating something maybe. But I was like, dang, I was like, that deer is not scared of anything. And then that was when I got further on up the mountain and took a break. And it was so cool, folks, because when I sat down to get a little breather, like the birds were chirping, the wind was blowing really lightly, and there was like tons of butterflies up there everywhere of all types. I mean, like the painted ladies, the monarchs, and all the other types, the smaller ones that you see that are like white and brown and all those sorts of colors. And they were all just like flittering around in the air while I was sitting down taking a breather, and the birds were chirping and everything. I was like, wow, it's such a nice day out here. Like, and the weather was perfect. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. It was just right. So it was a really nice day out.
Yeah. When I got to the highest elevation of my hike, I saw these like eagles or like some type of bird. It might have been falcon or something like that. I'm not sure what they were, but they were literally at the exact same altitude as the trail itself. It was like I think it was like 700 feet of elevation at that point, and they were literally parallel with the trail. And the wind was blowing so hard they were literally just stationary. So they was like hovering like 10 feet above the trail, stationary, and just they hung out there for like a solid like couple of minutes as I was hiking by. I was like, that is crazy. Like, those birds are literally just like stationary. The wind's like going so hard up here in the mountains, and also they were pretty high up, but it's parallel with the trail. It's pretty neat.
It's just so cool out here, folks. Like we didn't really have like the variety of places to go in Alabama, like especially in Birmingham and Wetumpka, which are the towns we lived in, basically compared to here. Like there was basically nothing out there. There's like an endless amount of things and natural beauty to get to wander around out here, which is just really cool. It's really something. Also, I saw someone say you should hike together for safety. It's not that dangerous on these trails. There isn't really a lot of large animals that live out here because it's an arid environment. The most dangerous thing that you could run into is a snake, and a rattlesnake specifically. That's basically like the only species of snake in Utah. And that's really the thing
I'm
that you
used to
look out
those.
for. Yeah, we're used to those. I mean, we dealt with millions of them. In Alabama, you get every type of dangerous snake: copperheads, cottonmouths, rattlesnakes, literally anything we could run into out here, which is just rattlesnakes. We've dealt with that and a lot more in Alabama, so you kind of get used to looking out for what you need to see and noticing the snake. Because if you're well trained in the eye and you've seen them enough, you can see them well before you step on them if you're looking at the ground carefully.
One thing you should be careful of though, because I actually have this. I have the newer iPhone, so it has like SOS and satellite communication on it built in, which is very handy, by the way. If you don't have that though, they recommend you have like a Garmin InReach or something like that, so that way you can do SOS. Because if you get bitten by a rattlesnake or something like that, and you're like way out in the mountain, you're in trouble because you're not supposed to like get your heart rate up after you get bitten by a rattlesnake. You're pumping the venom through your body faster. It's getting in your bloodstream, so you're kind of screwed if you're really deep in a trail and then you need help and then you don't have cell signal. You're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I had signal the whole time I was on that trail. You called me while I was on it still. Like I never lost signal once. And generally my kind of rule in my head is like, if I'm on my own, I'm not ever going anywhere where I lose signal. If I see that I lost signal on my phone, I'm turning around and going back to wherever I came. But that's just me. That's what I would do. But generally, weirdly enough, you can get signal almost anywhere. Like you can go all the way up to like Alta and Snowbird and stuff up here, and you can still have signal, which is interesting to me because it's technically in the middle of a national forest.
If you go way back over toward the Eagle Mountain, there is no signal out there. Like I actually was gonna go hiking out there, but I did not because once I stepped foot on the trail, I realized, hey, I have zero signal out here, and I don't trust the satellite thing well enough to actually go do that. So I just simply like called it a day and went to do something else. I won't go anywhere where I don't have cell signal either. Personally, I'm like I don't want to get out here and have something bad happen, like I don't know if there's like cougars or bears or something out here. Me personally, I could probably handle it because I've got protection to deal with stuff like that. But I don't want to get in a situation like that where I'm having to, do something to like a wild animal to try to get out of a nasty situation.
Also, apparently, Matthew, Eagle Mountain is apparently down here somewhere, actually. Because I just pulled it up because I was looking on the map and I was like, that's not Eagle Mountain. This says it's flat top and low. And I was like,
Oh, man, am I saying the wrong? What's that mountain up there in Harriman? Then I thought that was Eagle Mountain. I must be mistaken.
I think the one you see is Low Peak right here. I think that's the one because we've been calling this Eagle Peak, folks, to both of us for months now. I think it's not Eagle Peak. I think this is apparently Low Peak, and Eagle Mountain is somewhere further south in another county. Let's go look because that's like the prominent mountain we always see, the one we've called that. Let me drop us down on the street here on Bacchus Highway and let's see if that's the one we see in the distance. Yep, that's it. That's Low Peak and Flat Top Mountain. So that's not Eagle apparently.
Yes, I'm naming the wrong mountain then. Yeah, it's not Eagle Mountain then. It's this one right here. There is no cell signal if you get deep into this in those mountains that you're looking at right there. It completely goes out.
That's interesting, actually, because over here, it doesn't at all. Like, you get signal throughout all of these mountains over here. And honestly, folks, I like these mountains a lot more because if you look at the two of them, these are more arid and kind of desert-like until you get towards the valleys where it keeps the moisture and the humidity up a little bit because it's kind of like a contained environment. over here it's always luscious and it's very forested looking, and I really like that a whole lot because I like the kind of like seeing the trees and all of the animals and stuff, like the little critters like the butterflies and stuff that are around here. Like, man, if you had
With the
seen
with
it.
the bear, with the I see people mentioning something real quick. So but with the bears, like I don't know a whole bunch about the bears. I generally obviously know that with a big animal like that, like if you're trying to protect yourself, like I don't think like a 9 millimeter pistol is going to do you much good. Like when it comes to a bear, maybe a cougar, possibly it might protect you a bit. I think bear spray might be more important than like a pistol. If you're in a situation where you're getting attacked or one's charging you or something like that. I have a feeling that 9 mil is not going to cut it.
You generally need like a rifle, like a pretty big one, not a 5.56. You need like a 7.62 or a 308 or a 30-06 or something. Because like if they like the general truth is, folks, is if you shoot a creature and with like a creature like that with a round like that and it doesn't go down instantly, you're gonna get mauled to death before you can shoot it enough to defend yourself and kill it and then run away. But also there's a whole thing involved in that because animals in Utah and most states, even wild ones, are almost treated like people to an extent. So you have to kind of prove that you had to shoot the creature. So that way you don't get charged with a crime, because if you unnecessarily kill a larger animal like that in the wildlife, that can lead to an investigation and you're like, well, you didn't really have to kill it, and then you could actually get prosecuted for a felony of killing protected wildlife and stuff like that. So a little bit interesting with that. But generally, I think the best thing, Matthew, like for like that sort of a thing would be like a Colt Anaconda and 44 Magnum. That probably would be like the best defense, or bear spray. But also the other truth is, folks, is that black bears are not dangerous. Like they're dangerous, yes, but they're not dangerous like other types of bears, like the grizzly, which is aggressive, or polar bears, which actually hunt and kill and eat people for food a decent amount of time up in the north. Black bears are very skittish and generally very shy bears, and if they ever even think that you're getting near them, they'll most likely run off. They're never going to be aggressive and try and attack you for the most part.
Yeah, and then there's that bear that always talks about, preventing fires and stuff like that that's lurking around out there too. It's just for education. Like it's not really about violence or anything like that. It's just about education. They'll probably stop and give you a lesson.
Man, he's kind of chill though.
Hey man, I'm gonna give you a lesson. Hey, what'd you say to me?
man, this thing's always talking about only you can prevent wildfires. It's like, I don't know, dude. You're like always hanging out here. Why can't you prevent them? Like do a little bit for the cause yourself, huh? And then he mauled me, and now I'm like a dead ghost that's talking to all of y'all right now. So don't do that. That's not a good idea.
Oh, yeah, you never learned why he got the name Smokey. You never heard that story.
Man, he was smoking fools on the block.
Man, you don't want that smoke with Smokey. I'll tell you what, he didn't get that name for nothing.
Man, I tell you, man, Smokey the Bear is. I remember back in the day, folks, they actually had commercials on TV with Smokey in them. You remember that? They were voiced by that guy with the deep voice who did like the Dodge commercials, like the Ram commercials.
Yeah, I know who it is.
Yeah, I forgot his name. Sam Elliott is the name of the guy. But I remember they used to have those on TV back in the day. But beyond that, though, wildlife isn't that much of a risk out here, folks, and also mountain lions aren't like wildly common. And much like the black bears, they generally avoid people as much as they can, so not really that big of a risk. The biggest threat is snakes, and we've dealt with that our whole lives. So with that in mind, it is time for us to finally get on into some questions. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping right back into our Super Chat questions, this one is going to go to Chris Feilbach, and thank you very much, Chris, for that $100 support, and we appreciate that very, very much, and it's extremely generous. And Chris said, wait, what? Are you saying that the Chinese government steals intellectual property? Perhaps at an industrial scale with no regard for any basic human decency? Poop. The 2 U.S. patents I was awarded have also been filed in China, and I still have no idea why the lawyers chose to do that. And the CCP must be involved with the orb. And I got to say, China has a bad reputation for that. And honestly, it's a well-deserved reputation because it seems like a lot of our weaponry in the United States just happens to find a Chinese manufacturer and find its way into the CCP's arsenal shortly after it's developed in the United States. Seems a little bit too coincidental, if you ask me, for the most part. And I think the U.S. is trying to get a grip on that IP theft in the modern day. But it's very hard to get a grip on it because, it's hard to track it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you, Master, for support, Chris, and I definitely agree. It's nothing shocking that the Chinese would copy something of ours, but it's always shocking to see how much they copy it, like, it's an endless degree of copying that they do, to the point that it's unrealistic. It's like, how many things can they copy? And the answer is not enough. They'll copy everything if they get the chance. But a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running, and we thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a none other than a $50 support once again from Chris Feilbach. And thank you very much, Chris, for the second support. He said, today's orb word of the day is Spanish, orbi. It means orb. The orb of judgment encourages everyone to speak more than one language because it's fun.
And I thank you so much for the support, Chris. And I always say that it's better to speak more than one language, not only for career opportunities, but it's very interesting to learn the linguistic differences of languages, which then it brings you to the, let's see, it's the Whorf something hypothesis, which is this idea that a lot of people's understanding is confined to their understanding through the language that they know. And it's a very interesting sort of a sociological study, because either a culture will develop words for things that they have a lot of experience with, and if they don't have a lot of experience with it, they don't develop a lot of words for it, and therefore their understanding of that thing can only go so far because they don't have enough words to even describe what they might come into contact with. Like, for example, a really cool one is that a lot of Inuit tribes up in the northern regions of our continent, here in Canada and Alaska, a lot of them actually have about 30 different words for snow, describing the quality of the snow, the type of snow, or any other facets of snow. And also, these days, War says the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. That is it. But here in the U.S., is, well, in English, which is the primary language of the United States, we only have one word for snow, and it's snow. And we might have some adjectives to describe it, like packed snow, loose snow, stuff like that, but we don't have the vocabulary and understanding in which the Inuit tribes and peoples have in their language for a thing like snow. And therefore, U.S. citizens really just don't have this innate understanding or comprehension of snow, because the English language doesn't really allow for that to easily be done, which is a very interesting sort of a concept. And it's one that actually is reflected in a lot of languages, because if you look at how, like, Germans think and talk, even when they speak English, it's a lot more analytical than how English people think, or English-speaking people think. And I think that has a lot to do with how their language puts a lot more so on the semantics and finer details than English does. English is English is basically gibberish, is the best way to explain it. A very important gibberish and the most spoken gibberish on the planet. But still, if you ever look at its linguistic history, it is absolute gibberish, and a lot of it actually doesn't make that much sense. But with that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that has addressed that well. And folks, some cool languages to learn, by the way, some easy ones for English speakers would be things like Spanish or German or Dutch. Dutch is very similar to English, actually. It's just weirdly spelled. Or Italian, which is also very English, very, very English to learn, and very easy to learn, to be entirely honest, because it actually shares a lot with the English language. But anyways, with that, a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Roofer Terry, and thank you very much, Roofer Terry, for that 50, and we do appreciate that generous support. He said, hey guys and gals, take 3 seconds and go like the live, please, and be safe in this chaotic world.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for the kind words. You're helping us to keep this channel running with your support. And we are absolutely, massively appreciative of you helping this channel to keep on running. And so a huge thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And also, I see some people saying, no, you just don't understand English. Well, I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, I don't think a lot of people know this. English is very bastardized from what it ever was, because English in its raw form way back in the day was pretty much just a dialect of German, because of the Anglo invasion, or the Saxon invasion of England, where they basically genocided everyone who lived here. Basically, most people were speaking some form of High German back in the day, and then it evolved from there, and it evolved in a whole bunch of different ways, because one, it fused with some Celtic language to an extent from the Isles. Then the Normans invaded in 1066, and then William the Bastard became the Conqueror, and then he introduced French into the language, and so there's a lot of French influence on the language. Then there's also a significant amount of influence from a wide variety of other languages, not just French, as we started to borrow words from the from generally the Greek and Latin vocabulary. So there's a lot of influence, like loads of influences on the English language from other languages, and then the grammatical rules between them all start to not make any sense once you start to dig deep into it. It's actually very interesting that way. But we have breaking news coming out of Barksdale at the moment. So what do we got, Matthew?
Okay, so get this. I don't know why this is leaking out all of a sudden tonight, but we're getting even more details about the Barksdale incursion. Remember, I just mentioned all the other details about how advanced these drones were, and now we gotten another, and this is probably the most serious piece of information we gotten about that incursion so far that just came out. Apparently, when these drones were swarming Barksdale Air Force Base, this was during the exact hours that the B-52s were trying to launch to support Operation Epic Fury against Iran. So apparently it was interrupting the launches of our bomber aircraft. Apparently that might be the intent of why the drones were there in the first place, and that might explain why they were there for multiple days in a row, for several hours in a row, because they were trying to keep the aircraft from being able to take off from Barksdale. So I mean, that's probably the most serious thing we've heard so far about the actual, situation itself. So, Enforcer, what do you think about that? That's pretty wild.
It's pretty interesting. You know what's interesting, man? I think I said something about that way back in the day. I was like, it sounds like they're probably flying over to try and get an active number of how many are left, and then get an idea of how many of them have gone over, what serial numbers they are, and maybe even the crew that were on board. I think I said something like that back then, and it looks like they were trying to do that in real time while they were leaving.
Yeah, it's just crazy, really. It's really disturbing, by the way, that the U.S. government really hasn't made a statement about this, because I'm sure they have more details than we have. But it's like, we have potentially enemy drones operating freely in U.S. airspace. It could threaten civilians, possibly. Like, imagine if one of these drones right here was armed with some type of weapon that could attack civilians if whoever's operating these decided to pull that off. So it seems like the public might be entitled to an explanation. Not everything can be secretive. It seems like we should know probably what this is all about. We don't need to know about all the force deployments and all the classified information. We simply need some type of explanation as to what threat this poses to normal everyday people. But we haven't heard anything like that. In fact, they are so quiet about it. Unless you heard it from mainstream media or some other journalist, you wouldn't even know it existed.
Yeah, and that is really something, honestly, But the U.S. government always has to act like everything's super secret. I'll be honest with y'all, folks, it's very aggravating, actually, how for so long the U.S. government acts like everything's super secret. Like, you'll be like, well, what did you hit in Iran, and what kind of damage do you think that causes? That's classified. And everybody who ever gets to say that from the U.S. government, they have, like, this big smile on their face, like, I get to know it, you don't. And it's like, why can't you just say, like, Zelensky would be like, we blew up, like, the Belgrade power plant for, like, the 90th time. It's a blackout in Belgrade again. And it's like, you just know. But then with the U.S. government, they can do the same thing, and they'd be like, well, what happened? We can't tell you. It's classified. Even when you can literally see it with your own eyes that they knocked out a power plant and the power's out, if it was a similar situation. It's very annoying with that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Adu Bos, and thank you very much, Adu, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. They said the question is our military equipped with leadership to win a war like this in Iran?
Our military is. It's more so the question of is the civil administration equipped to allow them to lead the war? And the answer is no. Because the current head of the civil administration, at least as far as the executive is concerned, is about as arrogant as one could be, to the point that they know everything and they can never be wrong, and they can never therefore listen to someone else and take their advice because they know better than them, and things are going to go their way or it's the highway, and that's how things are being run right now. Like, if people don't like that comment, I'm sorry, but that's just the truth of it. And I'm not going to stray away from that. So I hope that does answer the question the best I can for you, but that's really the issue that we're seeing right now, because everybody in the military knows that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be an issue, and everybody knew everything else that we've talked about on this channel, and that has been coming out over the past few weeks, but there's one person that didn't, and that would be the president. And before anyone says, oh no, he would, listen, he was a businessman running casinos and golf courses and stuff. That doesn't really prepare you to have any knowledge of grander national strategy or how a war is fought. So if that's the person making the final calls, I mean, that'd be like Jeb, who runs an auto shop, making the final calls, and he's never done anything but work on cars. Very similar sort of a thing there. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I want to take a moment to make the schizos and the world feel a little bit better, by the way. We have a little bit of schizo fuel here. This actually came out yesterday, but we didn't get a chance to show it, I don't think, on the air. Go pull this up real quick. I just retweeted it one more time. There's a video showing a surveillance drone being flown in Iran that appears to be mimicking an eagle for the most part.
Oh,
And it's a cheap replica of an eagle, but take a look at this. Like, take a look. This thing's flying around Iran.
oh my God! It's the bird
Man, look
drone.
at the birds aren't real, they said. But I mean, I guess if you weren't staring at me, I mean, who goes around like staring up in the sky? Like usually you have your eyes on the ground or you're at eye level, obviously, so you're not staring up. So if you caught this in the periphery or something like that, you might believe that it's a bird or an eagle or something like that. It might fool you, but the moment you look up and stare at it, you'll obviously tell that it's not an eagle. Like you'll be able to see that pretty clearly. But they're counting on most people aren't looking up in the sky, and they can usually get away. But apparently, whoever was filming this, they caught it. But that is interesting, though. They have fake birds flying around. That's how they're doing some of their surveillance.
That's really, that's something else right there. That's something else. The birds are drones, actually. Like, that's crazy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. At least the best that we can. And I saw someone in the chat asked a question about my comments on the president. They said, and you know better than him? Well, I know better enough that if I was the president, I wouldn't act like I know everything. I could tell you that. I mean, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to be able to do. Because sure, I talk great talk here on this channel about military decisions and strategic and tactical matters. But when you're the president of the United States, there's these people that are called generals, and they all work in the Department of Defense. And then you lean on their advice. So you call them all in, you go, General, we want to do this. Like, we want to do this grander abstract idea. So how do you think we should go about that at a tactical level? And then he gives his recommendation. Well, how do you think, other general, how we should go about this? And then they say it. And then you go, okay, well, I think that this guy's idea was better explained and it sounds a little bit more thorough, so we'll go with him. That's how you're supposed to do it. As the President of the United States, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know how to lead and how to pick the options of how to go forward. That's why the executive branch has all of these different cabinets, secretaries, advisors, and so on, to be able to tell the president what the good decisions would be made, and then the president makes that decision based off of the options that he's been given by his panel of experts. Basically, that's how you are the president.
I wonder if anybody from the administration listens to our stream, because obviously we don't know who listens to our stream. They might listen to it, maybe not, possibly. I'm not sure if they would take our comments as constructive criticism or they take it offensively. I have a feeling it'd be the latter, but hopefully they would listen to something. I will say I did hear today that I heard that the administration is considering suspending the federal gas tax, which I've been suggesting that for like over a week. So I'm not sure if they just came up with that themselves or maybe they heard that possibly from somebody out there. Maybe I don't want to sound crazy or narcissistic or something, but maybe they heard it through the grapevine or something like that. Maybe the idea we put out there got through the grapevine, possibly. I don't know, but it seemed like they were considering an idea that we were talking about for quite some time. So who knows?
Well, someone said, who says he's not doing that? He did. Where have you been? Like people who always say no one said he's doing that, and you're lying. He literally said on a Fox News podcast to a guy that he was talking to, oh no, I tell my advisors what's up, and I eventually encourage them to see it my way. So it doesn't matter what the hell the advisors think, because he doesn't give a damn. Like that's not something that's even political. That's just the truth of it out of his own mouth. And he'll probably tweet about us and say that we're liars, but I mean, you can literally go get the soundbite and listen to it from that podcast where he literally said, oh, I'd like the advisors, they all say this and that, but I encourage them to see it my way at the end of the day, and we'll go with that. So, I mean, there's no better example than literally from the person who we're talking about, and he literally said he does it that way. So what else am I supposed to do? Like, just say that he's lying about himself? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a $29 support. And thank you very much, Jack, for that support as well. And he said, stream 1492. Could this be Columbus stream 1492 AD?
Generally, we've never done anything like that before for history. But that is an interesting idea. And I got to say, big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you once again for helping this channel to be a possibility. And a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $21 support from Jack Ray once again. He said, we were just trying to help the Iranians launch their aerospace force leaders to lofty heights very quickly. It may be a wild ride, though. And they definitely launched the headquarters building into orbit. It looks like they in fact they kind of sent it down. They didn't send it up. They kind of sent it down a little bit. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say that generally, I mean, I guess that's a good way of looking at it. I mean, that's kind of a positive way of looking at it.
Man, you were looking at the chat. You need me to reread it?
No. I heard it. I was it's hard for me though to remember it. I'm trying to remember while I do that, by the way, because you always address it first, and I don't get to read them. Like I hear you read them off, and then you address it, and then I'm trying to remember what you said and what they said. So that's what makes it hard to follow. But beyond that, I would certainly say, I mean, I guess that's a way to get them on up there. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And also. I saw. Let's see.
You were reading the chat.
Yeah, I was at the same time. I mean, I'm having to multitask like everyone else does here, like you do. But beyond that, I saw some people saying, "Well, you don't know what's actually going on because you're not in the situation room." Here's my thing, though, folks. None of the people saying that right now were saying that when the last president was president. Like, how in the world can y'all say, like, people who are involved in politics? And here's my deep dilemma with this right now. Y'all judge people day and night. Like, Biden was a terrible president. That's a claim y'all all make, and he was disastrous. How do y'all know? Like, what if he was making the best options, and all of the options he made were the best options possible out of a collection of bad options? What if that was the case? I mean, like, that's the problem with people saying this kind of stuff, is that you sit there and say, oh, well, you can't say that his foreign policy decisions are wrong. And, we only do that when it's necessary. But then y'all the people get to have a blank check and then pretend like you can just say that the president, because of your bias, is entirely wrong on everything or entirely right on everything. And that's the thing that is really just goofy about modern discourse, is that we say stuff that is objectively just how it is. Like, we'll say before something happens, like, if they don't deal with the Strait of Hormuz, that's going to be a disaster. They don't, and then we say it's a disaster, and then people want to say that we're only saying that because we're political, when we already laid that out before anyone was even bombed. And then people want to go down this whole rabbit hole. Well, you don't know if he's making the right call. It's like, well, how do y'all know that the last guy was making the right or wrong calls? And y'all like to definitively say that 24/7, as well as everyone else that speaks on anything in this country. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Arar983, and thank you very much, Arar, for that 20. He said, happy Thursday, and thanks again for the great news. And the mainstream media is still covering the Savannah Guthrie thing as well. And just pay them the Bitcoin already and LSA. And I'll be honest, I'm not really familiar with that situation entirely. Is that the situation where someone went missing or something? I've heard about it, but I don't know a whole bunch about it.
I would have to say I haven't heard about that a whole lot myself either. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And also, by the way, I see a lot of people now going, "Oh, so you like the last president?" We criticized him to hell, and me personally, we said this when he was going out. I said nobody could really do worse than this, so whoever's coming in next is going to do better. And then we were proven wrong. So there you go. There's your answer. I'm not really a big fan of either group. I'm not a big fan of him or the current guy, to be straight up with y'all. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Also a 20 from Marion Deemert, and thank you very much, Marion, for that $20 support. And she said, sorry guys, Ukraine?
Ukraine. Well, we did cover it as much as we could, and I hope that it was good coverage. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from My Trucking Travels. He said, good evening, everyone, and take one from the chat, please. Denver, Colorado to Houston, Texas.
And thank you so much for the support from Denver, Colorado to Houston, Texas. That's one of a hell of a drive. And I got to say a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a possibility and keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the live chat question in honor of My Trucking Travels goes to Rob, who said, do countries like Russia and Iran bother about the Geneva Convention? Well, here's the thing, Rob. Like, I understand the point. And also, I will say, a part of me does believe, well, if an enemy's fighting on a certain level, should we meet them on that level? A part of me says we should, to be perfectly straight up. Is that a good thing? Probably not. But a part of me does say that if someone's fighting in the gutter, sometimes you got to get in the gutter with them to fight them, or otherwise you might lose. Part of me does say that. But ultimately, though, the reason why we're fighting Russia and Iran is because those states operate like terrorist organizations. That's why we're fighting them. So, we don't want to become the thing that we're fighting, because otherwise, why are we fighting if we're all the same and we don't have any, better morals or better ideology? Then why are we fighting in the first place? So, it's a tricky one. It's philosophical, I guess you could say. Should you get in the gutter to make it easier to win the fight, or should you stay true to your morals all the way through and hope that you prevail anyway? And I would say the latter. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that generally, could you reread that again?
Do countries like Russia and Iran bother with the Geneva Convention?
Generally, no. But if we also don't bother with the Geneva Convention and conducting a war in a civilized way, then what better are we than them? It wouldn't really make any sense at all, to be entirely honest, to fight a war as they do, because, for example, in World War II, or were we supposed to fight that war like the Germans and the Japanese were? Will we be justified in that kind of an action? And if you ask those people even back then, they'd tell you no. Like what the Germans did in World War II was reprehensible, and what the Japanese did in all of the occupied territories was reprehensible as well. And you never saw back then that there was even an argument in the United States that because the Germans and the Japanese stooped to levels of barbarity, that the U.S. should do that as a staple of our armed forces and how we operate. And that's just a strong no by me. The Iranians might conduct war crimes, and the Russians might conduct war crimes, but just because Iran is now going to start recruiting 12-year-old kids as soldiers, does that mean that the U.S. should start conscripting child soldiers? No. Should we go and conduct attacks on civilians? No, we shouldn't. Should we conduct attacks on energy infrastructure and other things that don't really push forward our war goals and objectives, but just cause suffering to the citizenry for the hell of it? And the answer would be no. And people always like to act like the rules of war mean nothing. But from a moral perspective, I got to ask how that works. Because for everyone to say how great America is, how is America any greater than the barbarians that are our enemies if we ourselves are also barbarians at the same caliber and degree as they are? And the answer is we're no different or better at that point. We're literally just a gang of barbarians fighting another gang of barbarians. And that doesn't really...
And also, we shouldn't have to resort to stuff like that. Like, hey, the United States is the most powerful country on the planet, militarily speaking, just from raw power. I mean, just the raw amount of money we spend on the military says the entire story by itself. And also, we back it up with actual competence as well, at least in the military side of things we do. So it's like, does the U.S. really need to resort to gutter-level tactics, being the most powerful military on the planet? Probably not. So it's like the fact that we even need to consider resorting to tactics like that sort of suggests that maybe it's a lack of strategy more so than it is about actual capabilities for the most part, because we shouldn't have to.
And also, I saw someone in the chat say, "Well, in Band of Brothers, they killed prisoners of war," and that's true, and that's actually some true stories involved in that as well. But let me ask you this: was that an official statement of the United States that whenever we took prisoners, just execute them all, or was that something that some random guy in the army did? That if the army at a higher level found out about, they were going to charge him with a crime and have him executed and hung for the crime of executing prisoners of war, or in some other form getting a lighter punishment? And the answer is that the U.S. government didn't say, when you take German prisoners, just kill them all. That was never the word that came down, and we never operated off that level. Random people can do crazy things. Like, for example, if someone in the United States, murders their whole family inside their house, does that mean that the U.S. government supports that action? No. Why in the world would that be reflected on the U.S. government just because that's a U.S. citizen? And it's the very same thing in a war. The U.S. government should never take a stance that war crimes are just totally fine and it's a blank check and it's a laissez-faire sort of a deal. We always take the position that we will never support war crimes because we are a civilized nation, and those people represent the United States, and the United States isn't a nation of bloodthirsty barbarians. If some individual person does that upon their own actions and that isn't caught, that's a tragedy. If they are caught, then they have to be punished to the fullest extent of the UCMJ and also our own laws here in the United States of America and international law at that point if it's necessary. But I would say that we never should go around and just act like war crimes are fine and acceptable, because that is moving backwards quite heavily in morality. And also, what does that say about us as American people? That we're just nothing but a bunch of moralless, mindless, brainless, like animals. And like that isn't really a good idea, you know. Like that's not one that I don't really like the concept of at all. If anyone should think anything about the United States, they should think that in war and in peace, Americans are some of the most moralistic people, whether they're driven by a religious perspective on that or even an a-religious perspective. Americans should be viewed as moralistic people with values instead of just a gang of barbarians and thugs. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you for supporting up with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from JIVRZ, and thank you very much for that $20 support. They said Hafa Adai from Guam.
And a big thanks to you for support all the way from the U.S. overseas territory of Guam. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for support all the way from Guam. Really interesting place there. And I gotta thank you once again for watching this channel and helping it to keep on running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Mary, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Mary, for that $20 support. She said, it feels like we're always a step ahead in situations like this. So with Iran, we are actually reacting or executing a plan that's already been in place while only showing the public what needs to be seen. Now, you know, Mary, what's interesting with this Iran situation is you might think about, compare it to Venezuela for a second. With Venezuela, the U.S. actually pulled that off like a masterclass for the most part. But the catch was, it was a one-step and one-and-done project because thankfully they were able to get Maduro out of there without casualties to a large degree. And they got Maduro out, and that was the end of it. And Venezuela largely started to comply with the United States. So it was a one-and-done thing. But if it had gone on beyond that, I think we might have seen a quagmire like we're currently seeing in Iran, because it seems to be that the current U.S. planning is more about winning the first step than having I guess you could say more of an endurance strategy. Like, for example, in Iran, we're having to really exercise a lot of endurance because it didn't end in the opening hours. I think they might have thought that decapitating the Iranian regime and taking out the top leadership would bring it to a quick end, kind of like the Venezuela situation, but it didn't. And that was very predictable that it wasn't. So once they saw it was not a one and done project, then they realized, oh shit, we don't really have a plan. So now we're going to play it by ear. And I think that's why we're a step behind, and we're currently on the defense. I think that's probably why. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I would generally agree with Enforcer Matt on that one, but also I think you're going to have to reread that one because I just sadly can't remember him for that long.
Yeah, they said they're a step ahead. Like, can you open a spreadsheet, by the way?
No, I can't because it's like way back in my emails at this point, so I can't even find it at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you as well. Let me see here. Let's see.
And so
all right, so it should be coming over to you right now.
All right, and so let me get access to that really quickly. And let me get down here. Let's see. So let's see. I would say that we're more so reacting, to be entirely honest, because generally, with how Iran has gone, we expected them to collapse quickly, and they didn't. And so at this point, we're largely just pressing on with trying to get them to collapse. And now that doesn't appear to be possible, so now we're trying to lessen our war goals to much smaller degrees and aims, so that way we can try and declare a victory and leave, when in reality, by our original war goals, we're not achieving any success at all in our strategic ambitions. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from KG, and thank you, KG, as well, for that 20. He said, this is such a quagmire, and we could have sent all sorts of support to Ukraine for the money we're spending for nothing, but hey, no more wars, right?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, no more wars. What are you, hating on the president? Are you kidding? What, you expected him to... The president can do whatever the hell he wants. You understand that, please? I'm just kidding with you, by the way, KG. I'm like, absolutely playing around with you. That's something that I found funny, I'll be straight up with you. Like when that president was coming in and it was like no more wars, I was like, for one, that's BS. But two, that would absolutely be stupid because there's some that we do have to fight. And then it went from that to we have conducted one completely unnecessary war in Venezuela, and then we bombed Iran last year in the middle of the year, and it did nothing to them, really. So that was technically a war that started and ended in a couple of hours as well, that achieved nothing. And now we're back at war with Iran again, which is a necessary action. But then it was poorly planned to the point it probably would have been better at this point not to go into the war than go into war with such a shoddy plan that turned out so poorly. But outside of that, though, I'd have to say we could have sent a lot of support to Ukraine, but at the same time, though, I do have to say that while this war has gone poorly, there is a purpose to fighting this war. It's just that it would have been good if the war had been planned and fought well, instead of it being planned poorly and then fought as well as it could be fought by our armed forces. Because generally we're kind of screwing over our armed forces. They can fight as good as they want, but if we have poor planning, there's no amount of good fighting that'll make up for a poor plan. That's just the truth of it. But a huge thanks to you for support, KG, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wind Walker, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Wind, for that $10 support. And they said 1 million IRGC troops. He said that sounds like a target-rich environment.
It does sound target-rich. I mean, 1 million armed citizenry would be, you know, a little bit easy to deal with, especially if they just group them all up and send them out in a giant pile. So, you know, I truly have to say, I truly agree with you on that one. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Born Recon, who said, I'm just going to be a million, well, actually, he said, it's just going to be a million moving Papa targets in Iran.
Generally, I mean, yeah, that's kind of what it's going to turn into, unfortunately, for those armed citizenry. But luckily for us, they really won't. We really won't see any significant resistance from them. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support that just came in from Game Theory, and thank you very much, Game Theory, for that 20. He said, when y'all moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, why did you choose that location versus Los Angeles, California, where other channel YouTubers are? And mainly because of the cost. Everything in California is crazy expensive, and we do good, but we don't do that kind of good when it comes to like California prices. And unfortunately, with YouTube and also generally being an online creator of sorts, your income doesn't change with your geography. So whatever you're making, like for example, in a state with a lower cost of living like Alabama or Utah, it's not going to change when you go to California and everything's crazy expensive. So you're just getting a lower quality of life basically, so it's not going to really pay off. You'll be living pretty rough in California. So that's why we chose Utah, because you get a lot more bang for your buck. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's generally the same reason, and also on top of that, like just to add this in, I have, like, both Matthew and me own guns, and the thing about California is that none of our guns would be legally compliant in California, so we'd have to sell all of them all to move there. And then that was something that I was like, that was a big deal breaker to me, because, you know, it's like, I don't want to have to just go and like sell my guns as quickly as I can, as cheaply as I can, just to be able to try and move to California. And then on top of that, it's a wildly high cost of living in California, and even at that higher cost of living, you're getting a lower quality of life at that point in California for what you're spending. And that's what a lot of people are running into with an issue right now in California, and that's why Salt Lake is a lot better, because it's actually cheaper, crazily enough, than Alabama, but it's also way nicer in almost every single way. So it's really a win-win, because you get a lot more bang for the buck, and it's also a lot nicer as well, even at that price point. So that's generally why we moved here. And also on top of that, another thing is that, you know, there's a myriad of other things. Like, for example, like in LA, for example, if the places that you would live in LA, they might be seedy parts of the city. Here in Salt Lake, there isn't really a seedy part of the city. Like, people around here go, oh, South Salt Lake is rough. I mean, hell, South Salt Lake is like the best part of Birmingham. Like, even the funniest thing about that is that it basically is. So when we go through, we're like, oh, that's not bad at all. And then anything else is better than that. So it's, you know, going up from there, you know. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, a big shout to Jason Lefebvre, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, Jason, for that $10 support. He did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that very, very much. We also have a 10 from Ukraine EN7ND once again. He said, all right, I had some more money, and take care, guys. I'll always be watching. Love you all, and be safe out there. Life's getting crazy.
And thank you so much for the support, Ukraine in 7ND. And I got to thank you massively for the kind words and the support, because folks like you help to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one, actually, I'm going to address one on the live chat. I rarely do this during the super chat segment here, but I'm going to address one. I saw one from GTA Master 5062. He said, "As a young American who wants to live the American dream, is there anything I should prepare for? And I don't really have a clear understanding of what's coming in the future." Now, as a young American, this is something interesting. Also, by the way, our channel demographic generally leans toward middle-aged and above, generally speaking. So it's not as many young people on the channel as it is the higher demographic for the most part. So for the higher demographic, they'll hear this and probably kind of relate to it, but not fully understand it, because you have to be in the young people's perspective to sort of look out and see, what's really affecting the young people at this point, because it's really kind of an interesting perspective. But I would say, generally speaking, the American dream for young people now is not going to be the same as the previous generation. It's better just to accept that and just sort of recognize it's just not going to be that way. Like, for example, home ownership is not as attainable as it used to be by any means whatsoever. In fact, for a lot of young people, for most, it's out of reach. Also, for careers, it's hard to have a stable career anymore, especially for young people, because now we're seeing AIs replacing a lot of entry-level jobs, and even before AI started replacing those jobs, the requirements and the experience requirements as well generally were so high that you had to have several years of experience to even get an entry-level job, which made it pretty hard for young people to get a good career. So it stuck a lot of young people in kind of dead-end jobs for the most part, which doesn't really get you a house, it doesn't really get you a car, it doesn't really get you much of anything. So they kind of rob people, young people, of a lot of hope. So generally speaking, it's really just play it day by day. There's so much changing right now with AI, that whole revolution, that you really just have to play it day by day and sort of see how it plays out. Because, I mean, we don't know if there's going to be a military draft in a year. We don't know if there's going to be a complete overhaul of the economy in a year because of AI. We just simply don't know. There's so much turmoil and tumult right now. It's hard to make long-term plans. That's the way I approach it. I do it day by day. But Enforcer, how do you approach it?
I mean, generally, we both approach it the same. It's basically day by day, because there really isn't any other way to do it. And it really was, it's a shame, because the job market just isn't the way it used to be. It's basically almost impossible to even find a job these days. And that's like the pity of it, folks, is that a lot of people don't know that either have a job right now or are way older and from a prior generation where things were different. Basically, everything's turned on its head over the past really 7 years. Really, I'll be honest with y'all, it really turned on its head after the pandemic happened, because the pandemic upended everything and flipped it on its head, as far as how most systems work in this country, and employment has completely changed after that. It's almost impossible to even get a normal entry-level job at this point, much less an actual well-paying career, and well-paying careers hardly even exist at all at this point. So it's really hard to even tell you what to do as far as a plan, and that's why we always talk about trying to improve the lot of the citizenry on the channel, is because that is really the only way that we could even try and start changing that to where you could conduct some long-term planning, because otherwise it's almost impossible. I mean, like, you could get a college degree, you can't get a job. You don't have a college degree, you can't get a job. You go to the trade school and learn a trade, you can't get a job. I mean, you literally can't get a job any way or how now.
Well, that's not true for the trades. For the trades, you can get a job, but the catch is, though, it's not appealing to young people, because, unfortunately, I'm not trying to. By the way, if you have a trade job, I'm not trying to insult or anything like that. But for young people, the way most young people look at that is and this isn't my view personally. I want to preface it with that. But a lot of young people look at it as if it's below them. Like for example, being a mechanic, being a plumber, being someone who works in HVAC. Me personally, I don't see anything wrong with those jobs personally. But I mean, for other young people, they generally look at it like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to go have this like prestigious job where I can have a Ferrari over here at the corporate office. That's what they think. That's what's in their heads. So it's a bad mindset, by the way, because the people that are going to win are the people that they're looking down on, because that's currently the best job you can get right now is the trades for the most part. These other jobs are fleeting. They're going away. These ones that the young people that have these really high standards in their head that need to be humbled a little bit, to be honest, that's what they're thinking. They're trying to chase this thing that doesn't exist anymore. This glamorous idea of a job that's going by the wayside. So it's kind of interesting with that. These days, if I had kids, which I don't, I would recommend not to go to college. If I had kids, I would say go into a trade, because these jobs that college is training you for, they're not going to exist in the next decade. They're going to be gone, and you're going to have wasted a hell of a lot of money, and also possibly my money as well, because I'd have to help my kid out with college, obviously. It's going to be wasting a hell of a lot of money. You're better off going to the trades.
I mean, like a lot of people say it's always better to go to the trades, but I've known some people who did go into the trades, and they're like, yeah, it pays well, but you destroy your body basically. Like my knees are giving out, and I'm in like my late 20s, and this sucks honestly. And they're like, honestly, I would rather do a job than the trades. Like they're like, sure, you can get a job in the trades, but is it really worth it? And like that's most of what I hear from them, like the plumbers and the electricians and stuff like that. And it's like, well, damn, they're not even happy, even with the pay they're making at the job they're having to do for it. And then it's like, it's like, is that really worth it? And it's like, also, does everybody in this country have to become like a plumber, an electrician, or something to be able to try and make a living? It's like, does everyone have to do that? And it's like, that's not really a healthy sort of a job economy. It's just like, what's next? They start creating AI assistants that can do the trade jobs, and then they all get their job group wiped out, which is basically a staple of the job market at that point, and then it's basically gone in about a year or two after that. It's like, that's not really a great thing. Like, it's like, there's like, I don't know. I'd have to say,
All the kids want to become YouTubers now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, really, honestly, that's the crazy thing. Like they all do. That's the nutty thing about it. They really do. And then what's crazy about that, folks, is like you can do something that you really enjoy. Truth be told, on YouTube. But the problem is that a lot of people don't make it. And so it isn't really like a viable job path for a lot of people. Like, to be entirely honest with y'all, we are absolutely lucky that this channel ever even went viral at all 4 years ago. Most people never go viral, even if they have talent. Most of them don't really go that far, and then a lot of people do it, and then they don't really try and lock in and like put in a lot of effort. And then on top of that, folks, like YouTube is life ending basically. Like if you try and work on YouTube, you're working like 80-hour weeks like we are, at a minimum, and it's like, and then you basically don't have any social life or anything. You're just doing this most of the time. You might have a couple of hours off here and there where you can go and do some stuff. But it's not like it's a cushy job where it's like, oh yeah, I just, make a living on YouTube, and you work like 2 hours a day and then have the rest of the day off. That is not how YouTube works if you actually are trying to make a living out of this thing.
Yeah, nobody understands that either. Like everybody thinks about YouTube is like, oh, you just occasionally like upload something when you feel like it or something like that. If you do it like that, the channel's not going to make money for you to survive on. It might make enough money to be like maybe a nice boost. You might be able to get like a nice dinner or something with it every month. But for it to be something that's an actual like life sustaining job, like you have to work it like it's a startup company basically. Those type of hours, you have to put nonstop work into it constantly, and then that's no guarantee it's going to succeed. That's the cruel part about it. Sometimes it doesn't even succeed even with that. So thankfully, everybody finds value in our channel for the most part. Thankfully.
Yeah, and I mean, like Jesus, folks. The thing that's scary about that, though, folks, is that we can't financially plan because there's no salary, and that doesn't matter how we make our revenue on YouTube, but there isn't a salary. So some months can be like unbelievably high, and then some months can be quite low to the point where both like, oh damn, like if that keeps going, we're gonna have to start pinching the pennies here. And that's like the difficult thing with the financial man is like, if we want to get a house someday and actually own a house, it's like, what if the income drops significantly to where you can't pay the mortgage? Because there's no guaranteed salary or income with this thing. It's just whatever is made. And that's up to really random chance, to be entirely honest with y'all, because, if video does poorly, the little bit of AdSense it makes, it doesn't come through. And if, some super chatters take a break from the show, and they're not supporting, then, our income takes a drop that way too. And then if all of that happens at the same time, and then for some reason the news isn't really that hot, and, a lot of people aren't watching, all of those numbers go down. And then it's like, oh, dang. And then if it does that permanently, that you might need to start looking for a new job. And so, job security really isn't guaranteed doing this sort of a thing. So you just have to work endlessly to keep it running, basically. But, that's the best advice that I can give, is kind of play it day by day. But I will say this, though. I will say this because I can speak for ourselves, and this won't work for everyone, but it worked for us. Having unmitigated passion for something that you truly love will really get you far. I always love talking about stuff like this. This is my bread and butter my entire life. I love talking about the stuff, researching, learning about it, and just obsessing with it. I never thought I'd be able to make a job out of it. And then this YouTube channel blew up, and then I made a job out of it. And then Matthew was able to hop onto it a month after it blew up, and then we were able to turn this thing into what's basically at this point a YouTube news empire, nearly, at least compared to other channels that do this. So, you know, if you follow your passion greatly, and you basically devote your life at this point to your passion, whatever you love, it never really feels entirely like work, even if you're throwing 80 hours a week into it like we are, and you'll probably make it really far because people will be able to tell your enthusiasm and passion for it, and they'll really appreciate it, and that will get you really far. But that's probably the best recommendation that I can make at this point. So a big thanks to you for support and help this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Game Theory, and they said to become a CPA. It sounds crazy. Be so many old CPAs don't know AI, and going to be so long before adoption. At least that's what I'm seeing. This LA, so be warned.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I'd have to say, a CPA is an interesting job. I've heard that apparently that the AI is trying to encroach on that job category as well, and some jobs are being lost because of it. But hopefully that's not the case, because that is a pretty decent job. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on into the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Valoran, who said, in the wider geopolitical context, how does the European and UK response speak to both the capacity and willingness for further support of U.S. operations in Taiwan, Cuba, or other hotspots?
I would say that generally, I mean, the Europeans really were never going to be involved in Taiwan, because most of them don't even recognize the Taiwanese government as having sovereignty on the island. They just say that Taiwan is a non-existent country. So they were never really going to get involved and help, and we knew that since the 70s. So that's really kind of our thing. Like, to be entirely honest with you, America is the glue that holds the sphere together. Europe really has no real connections to Japan, South Korea, or Taiwan, outside of some economic relations, but those are only necessary. Like, they don't have a huge sphere or an alliance with the East Asians. The U.S. does, and the U.S. also has a huge relationship with the Europeans. So we are basically the glue that holds this whole thing together. So the Europeans aren't going to come and help anyone out in East Asia, and no one from East Asia is really going to be coming out to help in Europe. We're really the only one that does. But that's our responsibility as the leader of the sphere. Like, we don't get to, you know, let everyone else do all the heavy lifting and all the hard work and then reap all the benefits. You won't be the leader of a sphere for long at that point. Someone else will take that from you. We have to go around and do everything for ourselves, basically, because that's just how the world works, and that's really how it's always been. So a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Mechtild, who said, it seems Iran fashioned its military to reflect that Iran saw itself solely as an aggressor and they would not be in need of a self-defense force.
Generally, that is true. Like, a lot of their forces are based around offensive actions, like rocket barrages, missile attacks, drone attacks, and such things like that. And generally, that is how they work. So you're actually correct on that. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Moby Duck, and thank you, Moby, for that support. And they said, I live in Lynn, Massachusetts, and we've been seeing drones over a certain facility in Lynn, and they make F-35, B-52 Black Hawk Apache engines, and in groups, one followed by a pack, and the state police are all over it.
All Lynn, Massachusetts, you say? Actually, looks like a neat little place. That's interesting. Let's take a street view of this one. Lynn, Massachusetts. Never heard of this place before myself, but now I'm interested. What does it look like? Oh, this is actually not that bad of a place. This is actually really neat looking. It's very New England looking. Like, I'll say that. It reeks of, like, that New England sort of, like, architecture and, like, feel. Really interesting, honestly. Not that far from Salem, where the witch trials happened, right up here. But beyond that...
Oh, the Salem of the witch trials.
Yeah, not to be confused with Salem, Oregon. Same name, totally different city. But beyond that, also look, there's Peabody right here. I always thought that was a fake town.
Yeah, where's that, what do they call that? Pawtucket?
Pawtucket. Isn't that down here?
I think it's Nantucket.
That's Nantucket, but isn't Pawtucket like a town on Nantucket?
I think it's all Family Guy.
Oh! Oh, damn, you got me. Like, you got me. Like, I was thinking it was familiar. I didn't know from where, and apparently now I sound stupid. Now I sound stupid, folks. Now I sound really, really dumb. But beyond that, I'd have to say that's very interesting here, and I thank you so much for sharing that with us. And y'all aren't that far from Boston either. There's Boston right here. That's actually a really cool spot to be in. Y'all are like really close to a whole bunch of stuff. But also one other thing that I have to ask y'all up there, I have to ask you folks up in Boston this: do y'all like Boston? Like the general area, the city of Boston? Do y'all like Boston?
I gotta love Boston.
Or do y'all not? Do y'all not like Boston, or do you like Boston? I've never been there. I want to go there one day, because it's a historic city and it's really cool and all. But I don't know how people from Boston like Boston. Do y'all like it there, or do you not? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the old historic part of Boston, which is a really cool place. Look at it, historic Boston.
Look at that. Strolling down the street in Boston.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4". Like it's a man, but oh man. Oh look, the Old North Church. Nice.
Look at that. I don't know if I could do New England. Like there's just something about it. I think it's just I don't know, like something about it doesn't do me right.
But Matthew, what about the modern advanced part of the city? Right here.
I just don't know how long I would like this. I feel like it would get old quick.
You know, I don't know. I saw someone say it smells bad there. Someone said very expensive, tight roads. Let's see. North End is nice. Part of my family's from Boston. Interesting. So a lot of people seem to have like mixed words. Big dig traffic sucked. Isn't that like that's that big ditch thing that the interstate runs through, I think. So yeah, I guess that would suck. But like that sucked in Seattle. They had something similar. Let's see. Skinny narrow streets, hard to drive, crazy drivers. Crazy drivers, I think, is an American standard because everyone's always talking about the crazy drivers from where they're at. I'll tell y'all, though, in our experience driving out here to move to Salt Lake, the worst drivers in the country were from St. Louis, Missouri. Like, no question about it, those were the worst drivers in the country. I don't think you could find worse anywhere if you tried. And some people are going to be like, hey, I'm from St. Louis. You might be one of the good drivers, but I mean, when we drove through there, it was like hell on the streets. Like nobody knew how to drive anything anywhere. It was.
I don't know. These Utah drivers are pretty awful. Like I will say, the state's a very nice state, but the drivers need some driving education badly. It's a very common sight out here to see like these massive like GMC Yukon SUV vehicles, and they'll literally like it's like. You don't have to floor it like when you take off. Like the people just like from a stoplight, it's like they're taking a drag race from the red lights. Like it's unfortunately it's always a soccer mom. It seems like it's every single time like a GMC Yukon like soccer mom floor it from the green light, and then you'll look in the rearview mirror and I'll every time be like, please don't rear end my car, please don't. And you'll look behind you and the soccer mom is slamming the brakes and the SUV's like literally leaning forward like on the front tires. It's like there's like a slow way to roll up to a stop sign. Like you don't have to like fly up on cars and slam the brakes. It's honestly kind of scary out here. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm always watching the rear view mirrors, thinking I hope they stop. And they so far they've stopped. But I've seen some wrecks out here, pretty much left and right.
You know, there was a meme, Matthew, that I think I saw, and I don't know if I sent it to you or not when we first moved out here. And it was about like the Mormon moms in their tank-sized SUVs with their 8 kids in the back driving down Interstate 15 after getting a swig, and it was like them just like wiping everyone out on the interstate. One of those things. Like I think that is a fairly relevant meme now that we've been out here for a little bit. Like that is definitely true.
Man, those GMCs have very good brakes. Like I've never really driven a GMC SUV, but they have some damn good brakes. They must have like F1 brakes in those things. Like, the way those things can stop like on a dime, like I know that's impressive. They know their audience.
Man, you know what's interesting, man, is that they probably at GMC have the secret one called the Utah edition, which they put in like the extra reinforced brake discs just for that reason.
Yeah, I tell you, they must do that as well. Also, I did notice out here, there's actually a very big car culture out here in Utah, like much larger than Alabama by a long shot. Like, and also people aren't douchebags that have like the nice cars out here. If you ran across somebody with a nice car back in Alabama, they were like 80% of the time they were going to be rude as hell. They were going to make a comment like, "Oh, you can't afford it" or something like that. No joke, like legit. Like the enforcer saw it, I saw it. It was like if you saw someone with a nice car, it was like, don't even bother making a compliment because they're going to make some insulting comment back at you. But out here, though, everybody's cool about it. Like, it's a car thing. It's the way you would expect it to be out here for the most part, instead of being rude when someone, gives you a compliment.
There was a time, folks, that I worked at this store called Greenwise, which I got to show y'all where it was, actually, because this is a very important part of the story. So, this is where the store was right here. It's now a normal Publix, which is a normal chain store, but I used to work there. And one day they had me in the summer sun in June, sitting out in front of the door right here, having to greet people who come in, and also having to deal with the carts in this tiny parking lot. So some guy pulled up in a Maybach, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, Matthew had told me about that. And, you know, I'm dressed up in my normal gear. I have, like, the little Greenwise apron on and all that crap. So the guy gets out of his car, and I'm not shitting y'all, folks. This is a true story. The guy gets out of his car, he starts walking up and say, hey, how are you doing, sir? That's a very nice car that you have. I like that Maybach. He's like, yeah, that's more than you can afford. And then he just kept walking. And I just was completely flabbergasted. I just sat there and just went silent and just watched the guy as he walked by. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I tried to compliment this guy's car and he's going to shit on me and like tell me that I can't afford the car. I'm like, the hell's wrong with this guy? It's like, I was complimenting him. I wasn't like offending him or anything. I legitimately said, oh, that's a very nice car that you have right there. I like that Maybach. And like the guy just took the chance to just crap on me out of the blue. I was like, that is rude as hell. I was like, I can't believe that. And I think Matthew dealt with that a couple of times too, but I remember dealing with that one instance specifically. And if I wasn't in that uniform and I wasn't at that work, I would have said, well, screw you, asshole. I was trying to compliment your car. But do you have anything like that?
Well, you know, when I was actually the manager at an outdoor clothing store, or at least the assistant manager, not the actual general manager, but the assistant manager. And I remember there was always like occasionally people that would come in that were from a specific area of Birmingham, which had a reputation for being very ego driven, to say the least. I remember a specific guy came in and he knew exactly what he was looking for. He knew the exact specifications down to everything, and he knew everything about it to the point where it was like, okay, you don't have to keep flexing on me that you know every single thing about something in the store. It's like, you don't have to do that. I'll just work here. But I remember he said something about, I'm not happy about such and such, the way this person back here didn't know such and such about this product. I want to speak to the manager. And I remember I said, oh, really? Okay. Well, I am the manager. Can I take your complaint? And the guy looked shocked as hell. And it was a moment of pure satisfaction for a brief moment there after dealing with this very rude, egocentric man that walked in there, knowing every single thing about everything, trying to prove that he was a know-it-all. And the guy literally just went, well, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. I was like, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And that was the end of the story right there. So the guy didn't get his moment of ego. It got deflated pretty quickly once he realized, oh, you're talking to the manager, buddy. I am the guy.
You know, man, I should have, when that guy said, you know, that's more, it's more than you can afford, I should have responded to him, yeah, how's it going paying that car loan? Like, I should have said, what interest did you get on that, by the way? Or are you leasing it? That's what I should have asked the guy. I would have been fired probably, but honestly, it's like, you know, I mean, like, straight up, I mean, like, that was so rude, unbelievably rude, folks. It shocked me to the point I couldn't even speak when it happened. Like, it was just so unexpected, because I was legitimately, like, being nice to the guy, and then he just took the moment to insult me as much as he could at that chance, and I was like, that is really something else. I was like, I can't believe that. Like, and the thing is, folks, is that people say that Alabama's a nice place, and I'm sure for some people it is, but for some reason, when we were there, it was just literally like the worst expected outcome in 90% of all situations would happen. And it's like, this place just sucks. Like, after that happened so many times in your whole life growing up, it's just like, this place just sucks terribly. Like, there's no way to recover from this. It's best just to pack up and move. And, you know, honestly, moving out to Utah, it's been totally different. It's like for some reason, there was a curse on us in Alabama. Like, for some reason, whenever we go anywhere, like, the worst case scenario would happen. Like, social interactions, everything.
You know, the best response to the guy with the Maybach who was being a prick, the best response to him would have been like, so did you get that from Budget or Enterprise? That would have set that dude off. You would have gotten fired. He would have gone inside and definitely got the manager over that one. He would have been like, what do you mean?
Man, that joke would have been so good. HR would have wanted to hear it.
I apologize, sir. I didn't mean Budget or Enterprise. I meant, do you have that on, like, you know, like a million easy payments of like 120-month financing? I'm sorry. It's like, man, that dude would have got you fired for sure.
Man, he would have said, do you know who I am? I would have been like, no. Like, I would have been like, honestly, not. But you'll know who I am, like, in a couple of years. Like, you'll know who I am. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A little side story for y'all there. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Lost, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Lost, for that $50 support. They said, in the early 90s, I loved computers. I never understood people, but computers and networks made sense. It turned into a 30-year career, all self-taught. And now in a wheelchair, but surviving from state retirement and Social Security, and plan for the future.
And that's a really interesting, and I think that it once again proves that if you have a lot of passion for something, you really care for something, you'll make it quite far. And that's really great to hear for you right there. And I gotta say, like, it's a good thing to plan for the future, but I gotta say that it's about as tough as it could be now than ever. Like, I'd be honest, right now, planning for the future is about as tough as it would have been right after the Great Depression happened, like in the 30s for a lot of people. Like, it's kind of there right now. And while we're not in an economic depression outright right now, the conditions for employment and jobs for most people our age is just impossible. And I know, because everyone I know that's my age that I know and still talk to, they tell me how tough it is to get a normal job. Literally everyone I know, it's near impossible, sadly. A normal job, or even a career. A career is even harder to get than a normal job. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from KG, who said, where I'm from, drivers are terrible and tailgating is a common practice. I found that strapping a couple of red jerry cans in the back of the truck tends to make them back off a little bit.
I'm sure it does. Like, that's actually a good idea, though. I mean, actually, that's a pretty decent one. I'll have to look into that and think about that right there. That's a good one. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Distrackum, who said, have you thought about doing a membership that we can subscribe to that makes members-only videos? I think your daily updates would be great for that, and I'm willing to drop a membership fee for the channel.
Generally, we do that through Patreon, but like, in Patreon isn't really for like exclusive analysis, because we want our analysis to be easily accessible to as many people as possible, whether they're paying or not, so that way they can hear some high-quality news without having to shell out some cash, like everything else is these days. And also, memberships, in my opinion, are kind of tacky. That's why we've never done them. And also, it starts prioritizing making money, really, over what we do, which is trying to get out high quality news to folks. I do thank you, though, and I love to know that people would like to see that our channel is even more well supported than it is. But generally, I think that I would start getting more towards the money grubbing side of things than actually running a high quality news channel. That's how we've generally looked at it for the years. But a big thanks to you for support, though, and also wanting to help support this channel and keep it running. But super chats and Patreon support is the way we keep things rolling, and it's I think that's generally how it'll most likely always stay. But a big thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Distrackum once again, who said the game is sold, not told.
And I suppose. And a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Ian Mitson. And he said, I tuned in late, but I'm sure it's going to be mentioned. But if they give guns to so many guys in Iran, could this turn into a civil war? And the people were rioting not too long ago. It makes no sense.
We don't know. I feel like they're probably going to pick loyalists, like people that probably were already working with the Iranian government to some extent. But there is always a chance that this could end up going badly for them, but I have a feeling that it probably wouldn't, at least in this case. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from DWRB, who said, I'm just getting off work, and did I miss the train segment? And what's your opinion on the Peacekeeper Rail Garrison project and the other train-launched nukes? LSA. Oh, train-launched nukes, you say?
North Korea has those, actually. Like, they
I
still
know.
have them.
I know, that's the bad sign. It's like, if North Korea's got something, you might not want to replicate it.
Probably not. But beyond that, I gotta say, you didn't miss the train segment. We actually haven't had one tonight. But if I have to throw one out there really quickly, let me think of something to yap about. Oh, you know what? I got something for you. A little bit of an interesting one. Let's see. Let me see if I can show this to you here, right here. Oh yeah. This is it. Oh yeah, this is it. Oh, Briaga. So this is, Matthew, you're not going to believe this. This was downtown Salt Lake in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
And you know where it was? It was behind that big old Rio Grande depot that they have down there. This one. Like,
Was that before or after the tweakers?
this was before the tweakers.
Also, by the way, there's not like tweakers like that downtown. Like
No.
there's some downtown, but it's not like hordes or something like that.
For some reason, they hang out in like the best spot to go rail fanning at, which is this curve right here. Like they all hang out right there, but there's basically none elsewhere in the city. Like they're all like corralled into that one spot. But beyond that, though, this is actually the Denver and Rio Grande's prospector, because there was a lot of trains that the Denver and Rio Grande would run through, or the Denver and Rio Grande would run through Salt Lake City, and this was one of them. And I always liked these folks. I always liked them a lot, like that orange paint scheme. It actually looks pretty clean. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a big fan of orange on trains, but the Denver and Rio Grande did it really well, and the Milwaukee Road did it incredibly well too. And I like those two. If you ask me about BNSF, though, I don't like BNSF's orange. I don't think it looks that good. I think they should have gone with, like, Burlington Northern's paint scheme, or they should have gone with Santa Fe's paint scheme, but not what they came up with as a mix. But outside of that, though, that's a little bit of an interesting train segment, I suppose, and local to the Salt Lake City area's history. And also, that's what the inside of the Rio Grande Depot used to look like at one point. Look at that. I think it still kind of looks like that right now, actually. Let me see.
Yeah, that hotel fixed it up real nice. I'm thinking about the wrong one.
Yeah, that's the
I'm
Union
thinking about the
Pacific
Union.
Depot.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that one.
You know, back in the day, Amtrak used to run through this, but when they ripped up all the tracks and shut it down, that's also, by the way, Mandy, this is why Salt Lake has that pitiful little shack for Amtrak, is because they were like, oh, what do we do? And they were like, let's set up a temporary station. And so the station that's been around for like 40 years now was supposed to be like a temporary 10-year train station, and then it turned into like 40. But they're going to change that, folks, because with the Olympics coming around, the city's pumping a whole bunch of cash into everything. So they're actually going to be building this humongous train station here at Salt Lake Central, which is going to be really cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address the train segment the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. And as far as railway-launched nukes, sadly, I just wouldn't know enough about them to be able to speak on them. Because while I know a lot about railroading and nuclear weaponry have not been a subject of study of mine. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the nuclear train said, keep my name out your effing mouth. I tell you what, come on, man. It was a GI train joke. Keep my name out your mouth. It's like, but anyways, though, jumping into our next one, this one goes to Gooberang, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much for the support. They said, are you guys brothers or something? And I have a hard time keeping track of who's speaking. And yes, we are brothers. I'm the older one, and the enforcer is the younger one. So we are brothers. But enforcer, what say you?
Yeah. Well, with that, I guess there's not much more to address. But yes, we are brothers, and I'm the younger one by 18 months. But with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support. And I gotta ask this, Matthew, while we're on here, why in the world is it that a specific YouTube channel and their viewers are always coming over and beefing with us? Have you noticed that tonight? There's been like 20 of them, like from the same channel.
But though, we learned a year ago that that's a bot tactic, because you remember back in the day there was another YouTube channel. Yeah. There was another YouTube channel as well that hadn't said anything bad about us, but we kept getting bots in here that kept saying, oh, this channel right here is so much better, and they shit on this channel. And we were like, is that channel trying to beef with us? And then we realized, hey, wait a minute. These are bots coming in here. It's a bot tactic to divide and conquer. They try to come in and create beefs with other channels that are generally pro-Western, so that way they start infighting, and that way they collapse each other, basically.
Yeah, because I was sitting here wondering tonight, folks, because there's been like 20 people that we've had to ban tonight that are just like cussing us out and like just raving over us and like comparing us to another channel. And from what we've heard, that channel has said, pretty decent stuff about us, and we've had decent stuff to say about them. But then these people are just coming in here and just absolutely just like crapping on us all night. I'm like, what's up with that? But that's probably the reason why. But it's really just bizarre. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Krogan, who said, good evening, enforcers and LSA, and take one from the chat if you please.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to get one from the chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Kells, who said, how many active nuclear plants does the U.S. even have, if any?
Oh, we have a lot of nuclear power plants that are active. We have dozens of them across the country, and even more reactors than that if we count all the active reactors in each of these power plants. But sadly, I wouldn't know them off the top of my head. But a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Tabitha Silver, who put in that 5 and said, "Hi, enforcers. I hope you're both doing good, and thanks for all you do."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the kind words. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Hachi, who said, "With Iran's regime fractured by strikes, won't a U.S. land invasion of Karg or Hormuz unite Iranians like the 1980s war, making a worse quagmire than Iraq?"
I would say, maybe it might, but we'll have to generally see. I wouldn't be able to say that with any certainty because that's one that really depends on a million different factors of how that ends up being perceived by the Iranian people, and that would be too hard to predict with any great reliability at the moment. But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Crispy Climber, and thank you very much, Crispy Climber, for that $5 support. They said that thanks for the insane work from both of you guys. I've been learning the maps across the world so much from these videos. And also, what is LSA and where did it come from?
And thank you so much for the support and the kind words. And the LSA is the community of this channel. And LSA stands for Lee Spring Army. And it's from a very old channel joke, but we generally took it, dubbed the community that name, and then started to build a general sort of philosophy and ideals around it, which hopefully we see that all of our members of the LSA try and adhere to. In supporting American and Western interests, regardless of political affiliation, trying to be loyal to the nation and looking out for the best interests of the citizenry, and also making sure to try and become as best informed as possible on global events and how that affects the United States of America. So big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Dish Trackham, and thank you very much for the third or fourth support of the night. He said, "My grandpa was Union Pacific 35 years, the superintendent for Pacific Fruit Express. You make him proud."
Oh, the Pacific Fruit Express, a high priority train if there ever was one. Matthew, do you know anything about the Pacific Fruit Express?
They had to make sure they got the fruit to its location in an express manner, so that way the fruit didn't go sour.
That's true. And this is actually...
Oh, really?
Yeah, actually, you're like very close to being dead on the nail, actually. So back in the day, folks, in California, there were a whole bunch of orange orchards, and generally no one was making any money off of them because orange juice just wasn't popular back then, back in the very late 1800s and the early 1900s. And so some guy came along, I forgot his name, but he started to market orange juice as a health tonic. And he was like, it's great. It helps you out with so much stuff. And actually he was kind of right, because nowadays we know that oranges are, rich with vitamin C, which is very good for you. And so he was like, oh, it's a great and amazing thing. And somehow this guy, who basically just came in and created snake oil out of normal orange juice, made orange juice blow up. And so everybody in America was like, I want orange juice. And most of the oranges at the time, Florida became a big one later, but at the time, a lot of them were grown in California. And so the Union Pacific Railroad, which already was a juggernaut by then, was like, man, we need to get in on this business of transporting these oranges east to the major population centers of the United States. So they came up with the Pacific Fruit Express, which is this car, well, one of these cars right here, but they would have dozens of these cars, and this would be one of the highest priority trains on the Union Pacific's railroad and other railroads when it came through, because as you all know, oranges are perishable and they generally start to rot pretty quickly. These cars are actually insulated to keep the oranges kind of refrigerated, or not really frozen, but refrigerated at least, before there was mechanical air conditioning, which is also pretty cool. And they would send these things rocketing across Nevada, Utah, and everywhere else to try and get them over to the East Coast, so that way everyone could have their oranges. And then there was another one that came around, and this one, Matthew, we actually saw when we were kids, which is the CSX juice train, which you'll remember it when you see it. Do you remember this, Matthew? Like when we get brought down to the rail yard in Montgomery as kids, and you see all the Tropicana fruit cars coming through?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's basically the same thing. It's basically the Pacific Fruit Express, but this one came from Florida, because this was orange juice and oranges that were being transported out of Florida. But anyways, a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running, and I think that serves as our train story and segment of the night. But a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have another 5 from Ukraine EN7ND, and thank you very much for that $5 support. He said, "You guys deserve the check." And I'll tell you what, your news gives me a little bit of PTSD.
And I got to thank you for the support, and I hate to hear that, but I'm glad to know that we were able to reliably and accurately cover the news. And big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Justin. He said, hey, about 1 million men. Iran has mandatory military service for men.
And I thank you for the support, and that is true. But is their training good? We'll have to find out. So with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Heroes Workshop who said Iran's recruiting 12-year-olds. So if something happens, then the Iranian government's going to say that the U.S. harmed children, just like the other proxy groups has.
Yeah, but the thing about that though is that it doesn't really work out if they're in an armed force and they actually try and shoot at a soldier. It doesn't really pan out the same way because if it's for example the Manab massacre, which was a tomahawk coming down on a girls' school, that is quite horrendous. I think everyone can agree on that. But if it's a whole bunch of 13-year-old kids with guns and they're firing at U.S. forces, very different sort of a scenario. And everyone would be saying, "Oh my God, look at what America did." Everybody would be saying, what the hell is Iran doing recruiting kids and making them fight the U.S. Army? That's really more so where the question would go at that point. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have here a $5 support from KB Anti-Kami, who said, we aren't fighting all of Iran, only the regime and its support. The IRGC is regime military, not Iran's. And also, they said the 12-year-olds are recruited for a besiege to oppress the Iranians.
I thank you for the support, and I thank you for sharing that with us. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mr. Jenkins. He said, for Roy Orbison.
And I thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from 1974 Gremlin, who said the U.S. never signed the Geneva Convention. International law is a joke in their opinion. How is it that countries can get away with horrific human rights violations?
The U.S. has signed the Geneva Convention. I don't know where you have heard that we haven't. We might have not signed a new edition of it, but I believe that we're still beholden to the 1974 Geneva Convention, if I'm not mistaken. And let me go pull it up.
I think he's confused. I think he's thinking about the ICC. We're not signed on to the International Criminal Court. That's one thing we're not privy to.
Let's see. So the United States signed and ratified all 4 of the Geneva Conventions in 1949. And let's see here. The U.S. also ratified Additional Protocol 3 in 2007, but has not ratified the 1977 Additional Protocols 1 and 2. So that would be incorrect. The United States is a signing member of the Geneva Convention. We were one of the key people in writing up the Geneva Convention after the Second World War was over. So that wouldn't historically make any sense that we would be heavily involved in basically altering the modern Geneva Convention and then not signing any of it. That would make no sense. So, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And also,
I promise you he's getting mixed up with the ICC. Like I could almost guarantee you that.
I think so, but I mean, if I don't know, like if they double down on no, the U.S. hasn't signed, it's like, well, that's just flatly false. It's like if that's the case, then why in the world was the United States in Iraq, which I would assume that this person was alive for? Why in the world would they be saying we have to follow the Geneva Convention, and in Afghanistan the same thing, when the whole time we would have never even have signed the Geneva Convention? That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So I think they're probably getting mistaken with the ICC. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Plutonium Fever, who put in a 10 and said the best news, and thank you.
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you for the kind words as well. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Christopher. He said, let's see. I'm definitely not reading that shit. Piss off with that. Honestly, what a nasty comment. But anyways, though, moving on to our next one. This one goes to the Jester, who puts in a 5. He said the 82nd is not the only airborne unit, and you have the 173rd in Italy and Special Operations Forces as well. Please correct yourself.
Let me go and look at my force disposition map here really quickly, because I'll have the 73rd on it, 173rd on it, if it is there. And let me go to Vicenza and take a look. Let's see. Hold up. Let me take a look at this. Let's see here. What division is it attached to? Well, hold up, folks. I'm trying to take a little look around here really quickly. Let's see, as an element of the... Let's see here. Dang, I gotta go try and find its modern structure. Hang on, folks. It is on my map, but the thing is that it's not a division, it's a brigade. And as far as divisions go, the 82nd is the only division level element that's an airborne one. So let's see here. A is attached to what division? So it is a separate brigade. So you are correct, but the thing is, though, and here's my issue with what you're saying, is that when I said that earlier, I was saying the 82nd Airborne Division is the only airborne and aerosol-trained division in the Army. That was the exact wordage. The 173rd is a brigade-sized element, which the 82nd Airborne Division is made up of 5, well, technically 3 brigade combat teams that are also airborne brigades, much like the 173rd. So while you are correct that the 82nd isn't the only unit, I mean, technically, if I want to get into semantics, I'm also wrong saying the 82nd is the only unit because technically there's 5 brigades under its command that are technically airborne brigades. So, we could, end up splitting hairs endlessly. I mean, it's like technically correct, but at the same time, if we're talking about the division level, the 173rd isn't a division, it's a brigade. But a big thing is to you for support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Live Animal, who said the the USA just said that there won't be any attack on Iranian power plants for 10 days. Honestly, I hope they keep pushing it back, by the way, because the Iranians are claiming that they never made a request to the United States to push back the deadline, but the U.S. is saying that Iran requested the deadline change of 10 days. Whatever the case is, I don't care if the U.S. keeps pushing it back. I just hope they don't hit the power plants, because if that happens, it's going to get ugly very quick for everybody in the region. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I definitely have to agree. And a big thing is to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Kirkwood Clay, and thank you very much, Kirkwood, for that $5 support. We also have a 5 from Bob Dobbs. He said, I'm taking my grandpa's car keys.
And I thank you so much for the support, and I got to say that's interesting to hear. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Live Animal. He said, are we moving into a situation where both sides will voluntarily start ceasing hostilities gradually?
I would say maybe, but I think this is going to be going on for quite some time, to be entirely honest. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Daniel Kerber, who said, you can either hike or drive up Francis Peak around Farmington to the top by the radar dome.
And it's quite interesting to hear, and I thank you so much for sharing that. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Chickadee, who said Smoky Bear, original spelling, found after a large forest fire in 1951 in Capitan, New Mexico, as a cub crying and halfway up a tree.
And that's true, actually. And Smokey the Bear would actually live out the rest of his life in a zoo. I forgot which one. But he also...
was a real bear?
Yeah, Smokey the Bear was a real bear. And then they made the cartoonized version of him for wildfire prevention.
I thought it was a phony. I didn't know it was a real deal.
Let me pull it up. Like, we can actually find it. Real Smokey the Bear. And let's see here. So here is the real Smokey the Bear. Right there.
Oh, dang. And they got the slogan behind him and everything.
Yeah, and then here's Smokey when he was growing up.
Oh, wow. That really became a real large bear, I would say. That thing became very intimidating.
He was rather blumpus. like Smokey was rather plump. And here's a in-color picture of Smokey.
Damn, yeah, Smokey. Smokey was definitely an enforcer for sure. He was enforcing the fire code.
But this is what little Smokey looked like when he was first found. He was a little cub, and he became a symbol of wildfire prevention. And then that's when they got this one right here. You can actually see like this. Well, actually, that's a little book about him, but it actually shows him as a cub, and then it shows the little cartoonized version that the Forestry Service made for the wildfire prevention campaign. Kind of a neat story, actually.
Yeah, I like the bears when they're cubs, but when they get to be like huge bears, like they start losing the cuteness real quick.
Man, this one's going, only you can prevent wildfires. This one's going, hey, you gonna eat that? Like, man, it's like yo, like that's a big boy right there. I mean, look at that thing.
Only you can prevent food waste. Give it to me.
Yeah, that's what it said. Only you can prevent wastefulness. When like just start horking down all the food, it's like, man, this thing is a national treasure. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt. He puts in the 5. He said, I've section hiked the AT from western North Carolina to eastern Tennessee with no problem, but I had bear spray and protection. Humans are the real dangerous animals, lol.
And the Appalachian Trail, the AT, is quite an interesting one. You know, they actually say that the Appalachian Trail is one of the most arduous and dangerous trails to actually travel in America, which is quite interesting. And it's actually not for the reasons y'all would think, folks. It's actually just due to the rapidly changing weather on the trail for most of the part of it, and also the fact that the trail is incredibly old and is kind of like falling apart in some places. So, you know, if you end up losing the trail, you get lost and die. And so that's an interesting thing. I gotta say, you're pretty right about that. People are probably the most dangerous thing out there, really. Like for other people, like when you're in the middle of the woods. Because you never know who's out there. There could be highwaymen out there, basically like the modern equivalent of them. So you got to be careful about
You
that.
know, a while back there were serial killers hanging out like in some of these places. I can't remember what state it was in, but they would hang out like on these nature trails and stuff like that, and they would cap people and like take them out in the back and stuff like that where you couldn't find them.
Yeah, that's actually true to an extent. You know, a lot of people go missing out there. You know, but beyond that, you are absolutely right. I'd have to agree with you, Andrew Honeycutt. And so, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And also, by the way, I saw some people saying in the chat about the whole airborne thing. Well, what about the 101st Airborne Division? And what about the 11th Airborne Division? They're airborne in name only. And that's the thing that I kind of got to point out here. The 11th actually does have an airborne brigade inside of it, but the 11th isn't really a true division. Like it's only has 2 full brigades. One is an air assault brigade and the other is an airborne brigade, and it's generally created as a rapid reaction force for Arctic weather environments. So it's not really it's not a full-born airborne division, one, and then two, it's not a full division-sized division in reality. The other thing is that the 101st Airborne is not even an airborne division at all. It's only an airborne division in name. If they were accurate, it'd be the 101st Air Assault Division, because none of those guys in the 101st are jump trained on anything at all. They're all air assault. They all go in as an air assault unit these days. The reason why the 82nd Division is special is because the 82nd Division is the only division where all of its brigade combat teams are airborne trained and airborne specialized, but they also train in air assault as well. And the high likelihood is that if you ever see the 82nd Division operating in real life in the modern day, they're also highly likely going to operate as air assault and not as airborne troops. So I hope that clarifies a little bit of the misunderstanding there, because it's one that a lot of people really don't know a lot about. But I hope that does kind of clear that up a little bit. But with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Moby Duck once again. He said, also random, I'm a millennial, and you guys get the age range wrong every time, LOL, and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. And we're trying our best here. We're trying our best, really. We are. I swear. But a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Chris Feilbach, who puts in 5. He said, are there any bright pink trains?
I think there are, actually.
Don't they paint them up for that breast cancer awareness?
Let's see. Pink trains. There are actually some. Like, I'm finding a couple here. Actually, hold up. Oh, there's that one. I'm trying to see if I can find one. What in the world? Oh, yeah. Florida East Coast did do a breast cancer awareness one.
Yeah, I thought they probably would.
Let's see here. Any other American ones? There's one in Japan. There's a Shinkansen that's pink. But I think that's a Hello Kitty thing, because, like, the branding's pretty on point. But there's not really a lot of them in America that I can think of. But there are a lot of special trains with special paint jobs and liveries, but not a lot of them are pink. Like Norfolk Southern, though, Norfolk Southern, City of Birmingham. Norfolk Southern has come out, I think, with what they're calling the City Series, which is in this nice, like, reddish sort of a color, which is kind of close, but not really pink. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Plazoth, who put in a $4 super chat. We do appreciate it very much, Plazoth, as always, and also being a longtime channel legend. We also have a 5 from Live Animal. He said, pretty big hunch that everything else apart from the 2 Iranian islands between which the ships are passing has been heavily mined already.
I think so, and a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Chris Feilbach. He said, don't read. And I guess we won't. We'll abide by the request. But thank you very much, Chris, for that support once again. And we also have a 2 from Uncovered Cube, who said, y'all rock, and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the kind words. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we have a 2 from Mamba Mentality, who said LSA, and they about to live up to their name, Iran.
And they are. And a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Heroes Workshop, who said Iran can stock up on supplies from a market.
Interesting. That's deep.
I didn't know how to reword that one right there. I kind of got tongue twisted a little bit.
I mean, I suppose, like, I see what it is, and I suppose, but a big thanks to you for support, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, by the way, to the political bots that cry foul, cry snowflake, cry. Oh, it's coming back. Oh, it hurts. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Trippy, who said a certain time in Germany also used child soldiers in pure desperation.
That is true. I can't even say the name of them on air, but that is true. But they also were incorporated into the Volkssturm, which is the People's Army, basically, or kind of like the People's Storm is what the technical term is. Because even back then, they were into calling things like epic and, stuff like. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from John Ferrario. He said, for the gasoline fund, and I appreciate the work. And also, I think the gas is above $4 now in Salt Lake City. It was $3.99 last time I saw it. I think it's above that now. So it's outrageous. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say that gas is rising. Oh man. I was really hoping for those low gas prices from the last little presidency, and then they got low, and I was kind of like good for a moment, and then they're now going back right where they were, and it's like, well, damn, kind of defeated the whole purpose, didn't it? But a big thanks to you for support, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a £4 donation from Butchie777, who puts in the coffee mug right there. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that support as always. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep running. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Alien Fun, who said, embarrassed to be a Brit. I'm sorry, lads.
Oh, never be embarrassed to be from your country. I mean, like people always say that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know why anyone should ever be embarrassed of their country. Like the people in the government who are running your country are not the country. They're just people in it. Like you can be proud of Britain for all of the amazing things that it's done in its history. The amazing people in Britain. Never be ashamed of your country. Never let people get that kind of pride and beating someone down to the point that they start acting like they're ashamed to be of the country they're from. I'm proud to be American. I'll say this like just straight up. The current administration and the foreign policy is absolutely abhorrent, and that is quite a shame. But that'll never, like, some clowns in the Congress and the White House are never going to make me ashamed to be an American. I'm always going to be proud to be an American, no matter who's in charge in the government. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would suggest you do the same. Don't ever be ashamed of being a Briton. Be proud of it. It's your country, and there's no other one that you can claim as your own.
I'm not even sure if they let you be ashamed to be a Brit anymore. I think they might show up and be like, "You've spoken a great slander against His Majesty the King.
You have spoken great slander against His Majesty's United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You shall be subject to imprisonment at His Majesty's dungeon of Hertfordshire." And it's like the absolutely worst prison you've ever seen. Like, it's worse even than Tutwiler. It's like, oh my god. It's like, British prisons, folks, are terrifying. I don't know if y'all have ever seen them, but they are bad. Worse than even American state prisons.
I think they're light work, personally.
Have you seen them?
Yes, I've seen them. I saw Gordon Ramsay used to go into those prisons and teach them how to cook and stuff like that. They're not nearly as bad as like an American prison.
Hold up. Let me show you His Majesty's prison. Let me see here. I gotta get one of the rough ones, not one of the like low containment ones. We need to find the high security ones, the ones from like His Majesty's times of the 1700s and the 1600s. They are freaking brutal. Here you go.
Yeah, that's the ones I was thinking about. That's the ones right there. I saw Gordon Ramsay in there teach them how to cook eggs and stuff like that, and teach them how to be productive and everything. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, I will say the British prisoners, like, I don't know if it's just the accent or something. I don't know what it is, but to me, they don't seem that intimidating. Not nearly as intimidating as what we got in American prisons. American prisons is a free-for-all.
Let me type in Alabama prison. Oh, Lord. It's worse.
My goodness.
It's worse.
My goodness. You're getting in some bad trouble in here. If you're not in some type of clique, you're in some deep trouble.
Oh man, dude, I'm not gonna lie, man. That honestly is something. I was like, man, British prisons are rough, and then as soon as I type in Alabama, that just has threw that out the window. I mean, like, there's no comparison. I mean, like, look at the floor. Like honestly, folks, like the thing about British prisons is that they're built like castles because they basically are, and then with Alabama prisons, they're built almost like honestly like temporary like refugee camps of the lowest order is basically what they're built like, and they really show that. This is probably one of the best pictures they could get out of an Alabama prison, is the crazy thing about it.
And they got some real dangerous ones in these Alabama prisons. I tell you what, these guys in here they're definitely, I would say, orders of magnitude probably worse than whatever Britain's got happening in their prisons. I can tell you that it's a rough environment.
Oh, oh,
Man,
really?
the South's prisons. Shoo, my goodness. I can't remember which state it was, but there was some state. I don't know if it was Georgia or which state it was, but there was some like big thing that was happening where they had like the sewer like flooding into like the floor of the prison or something like that, and they had to like move the prisoners into a different spot. I mean, yeah, I mean, look at the pictures of
This
this
is
type of stuff right
Mississippi.
here. Yeah, shoo, my
I,
goodness.
I
Like
wonder
these
what a
prisons are tough.
Utah. I wonder what a Utah state prison looks like. Oh,
I feel like they're not going to be as nice as you'd think though. Like it may look nice in these pictures, but I feel like it's still going to be pretty dangerous.
you gotta admit though, like qualitatively, the structure is of a far higher quality than Alabama.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, but like I always say, Utah, like even if you went to prison in Utah, it wouldn't be like, at least like as far as like the quality of the building you're in, not the people in there, because I think that's going to be a standard across the board, like the quality of the folks in there. But generally, like the building is a lot more chic, if we want to put it that way. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a find from Live Animal who said the reason the USA wants to acquire the two Iranian islands between which the Indian and Chinese ships are passing is that it's definitely not mined.
That is true. And a big thanks to your support and help with this channel to keep it running. And also, someone said, I'd much rather be a Utah prisoner. I wonder, here's my question. Do the missionaries of the Church's Latter-day Saints go cell to cell in there? They're like, hey, have you heard about our Lord and Savior? Like, do they do that?
They probably would, I would imagine. They send the Mormon missionaries to the trenches, like those guys, and also the women too. They send them to the trenches, and they don't think a thing about it. Like I will say, I'm not a Mormon, but I do respect the fact that they will go literally anywhere and do what they got to do with the recruitment. They will literally step foot anywhere with no hesitation.
Man, like honestly, man, like they'll send the Mormon missionary folks to like Uganda in the middle of a civil war, and they'll go befriend the warlord and be like, "Have you ever heard of the Book of Mormon?" It's like it's so bizarre, like, and like they like they'll just do like honestly, I got a lot of respect for them. They mean hell or high water when they go on those mission trips. No matter what, they're going to do what they were supposed to do. I mean, you got to give them some respect and kudos for that. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a find from Kyle Padell. He said Huntsville, Texas prisons. Take a look.
Huntsville, Texas. Let's take a look at that. Huntsville, Texas.
In Huntsville, Alabama, they make the vampire system that Ukraine uses.
That is true. Oh my lord.
And in Troy, Alabama, they make the javelin system, which Ukraine also uses.
Here in Shawshank, we got a couple of rules. Man, I'm not gonna lie. Dude, I think if I went to this prison, it's over. Like, I'm gonna be straight up, man. Like, the outside of this thing looks like you're finished if you go here. Oh, lordy.
In here, we have the inside of the prison. This is where we keep them all. Have you ever seen like the interview of the executioner from Alabama? Like I think it was Atmore or something like that. It was like the executioner of the prison did an interview. That was scary as hell. Like that was scary as hell. I've never witnessed an execution in the prisons. Alabama still has the death penalty, by the way, so you can get executed for a crime if it's a capital offense. So I've never seen one personally, but I know individuals that have witnessed that, and it's a scary sight. The folks that carry out those executions, they're different. Let's just put it that way. It's a very strange environment.
So right here, folks, is the Wind Creek Casino of Atmore. Let's see here. Oh, there it is. And when you come here, you can gamble a good time. Woo! And then across the street, right over here, at the Holman Social Services Department, or Holman Prison, this is where they gambling with people's lives, because this is where the electric chair, well, not really the electric chair these days, but this is where death row is actually in the state of Alabama. It's in this prison in Holman.
Yeah, it's true. Also, people are saying electricity. I don't think they do the electric chair in this facility anymore. I think they do mainly lethal injection is the primary method, and I think they also have gas asphyxiation. I think that's the other one in this prison. I can't remember that for certain though, but it's mainly lethal injection.
So I think they do. I think they do injections, and then they have the gas chamber, and then they have a couple of other things. But I think the state of Alabama passed a law that if lethal injection or the gas chamber wasn't available, then other forms of execution could be used, and that would be up to the prisoner's choice, even including firing squad. Which, good lordy, folks, I wouldn't want to be put to a firing squad in Alabama. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'd be like, you know what? I think, like, I'd be like, I think I want something else. I think I'd go with strangulation at that point over a firing squad in Alabama, because, like, I know some people are gonna be like, they probably are pretty accurate, but I don't know about that. Like, I don't think so. So, you'd have to see, but generally you don't want to go to Holman. Holman's basically death row in Alabama. That's really the only purpose it really serves, honestly. But anyway, it's a normal prison, but most of it's death row. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a two from Bruce Lee who said, "Jobs. I'm starting CDL school paid by trucking."
Oh, and that's good to hear. I've been hearing some friends of mine have some horror stories actually about trucking and how hard it is to find a job these days. But I hope that it goes well for you. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a one from GTA Master, and thank you very much for that $1 support, by the way. And I did address your question from the live chat earlier, by the way. We do appreciate the support once again. And we are actually out of super chats, folks. So it's now time to get into our Morse code decoders and a few questions as well. Our Morse code decoders tonight were Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Fluffiness, as well as Kush, Koteric, Sire, Brian, and Encrypted Clippy. And then they said, Morse code says, "What do you say when you see something that you don't like?" Iran. LLT, LSA.
Ding, ding, ding. And that was the Morse code message of the night. You got it. Y'all got it. Police Spring on Signal Corps did it once again. Absolutely unbelievable. And I got to say, an impressive and amazing thing to see y'all getting that correct time and time again. And so a humongous congrats to y'all once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, I also saw some people say some stuff about executions and all in the chat. And I saw one person say, let's see here. Some people were saying, well, the firing squads, they carry blanks, But here's the thing about that, though. If you've ever fired a blank, you know that they don't have any kick. And also the concussive sound is different of the shot because there's no bullet that it's pushing out. It's just the actual powder blowing forward out of the barrel into the open air without any pressure. And so I don't know if that actually works for people to know that they weren't the guy who fired the shot, because, I've shot blanks before, and you can really easily tell if there's any kick or not with a blank or a live round, and I don't know, if they do that, I think a lot of people know if they were the ones who fired the live round at the end of it all. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into 3 live chat questions, and also the one last super chat that we have in the chat. Matthew, what do we got?
This one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5. He said, favorite GTA enforcers. And my favorite is GTA 5 because I really didn't play any of the other ones. I think I played one of the other GTAs, like Liberty City or something like that on the iPhone, but that's not really playing GTA. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say GTA 5 as well, because I didn't play a single other one. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Wookstar, who said, well, quick question. When did this Iran war start? And I wonder if it's been longer than the 12-day war.
It's definitely been longer than the 12-day war. It pretty much started almost to this day a month ago, nearly. So it's been nearly a month now. So I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the second to last question of the night.
We also have a question from Catherine, who said, what was the timing of the bizarre flag and pointy shoe post relative to the conflicting statements? And did they happen between the flip-flop?
I really don't know, sadly. I'd have to say that I have to declare ignorance on that at the moment. But I hope, unfortunately, that answers my ignorance to the answer to the question somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is One Visual, who said, will this war with Iran cause other countries with important waterways to have more power over the world financial markets?
I mean, it certainly could, especially if a lot of those countries are rogue like Iran, but there really isn't a lot of countries like that are in the situation Iran has with the Strait of Hormuz. So luckily, that won't be something that'll be seen often around the world, but the Iranians, if the regime survives, are definitely going to start using this over and over again on us into the future if they're able to keep control of it through this whole war right now and come out of it governmentally intact. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that in mind, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I got to thank you all so much for y'all's time. And I also got to thank y'all greatly for watching. There's still 12,000 people here right now. 28,000 people here live at the peak tonight. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover the stream and this news with each and every single one of y'all. And we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made, I, the Enforcer, will be the one making that short war video for all of y'all. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and I'm Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And a big shout out, folks, to the almost 250,000 people that joined us tonight, and we appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source. And be sure to join us again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream, and maybe midday for a short war video if there is enough news to cover, and we will see you all then. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Army